RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast on 104.5 The Zone. Just brewed up my first cup of 8th and Roast this morning. Got the French New Wave going.
Hey, now.
There you go.
No cream necessary. Never any sugar necessary. That's a waste of a good cup of coffee.
I've transitioned mostly out of that.
Sugar?
Yeah.
I like stevia still.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I usually one creamer and one pack is where I am. Slowly transitioning away from the one pack.
Didn't know that about y'all. It's disappointing.
Yeah, I'm not
have
like
some
half and
sweetness.
half though. Yeah.
No, I'm not half an
I feel
hour.
like stevia respectfully tastes like diet coffee.
Really?
Diet coffee.
I don't know.
I don't really taste that.
Yeah.
I got coconut milk in here though. A
You
little
got
bit.
coconut
Ooh.
milk.
I do a little coconut milk.
I was about to ask. Never mind.
Okay.
Put the lime in the coconut and drink it all
You
up.
put the lime in the coconut.
No. That's interesting right there. Coconut milk. I've had it. That's the one I do like is coconut
Yeah.
milk. Yeah.
It's not dairy.
Yeah.
Question for the people.
Okay.
Have you changed your mind on the Mike Vrabel firing now at the end of the week? New information out, details about a deteriorating relationship between Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams-Strunk dating back to last year when Mike Vrabel wanted Bill O'Brien, Chip Kelly, Bill Belichick level power on personnel. Does that change your knee-jerk reaction on Vrabel losing his job?
I honestly didn't have a knee jerk. I was shocked more than anything, but I understood what I think the plan is for Vrabel. Do I think he's a real good coach? Yes. Do I think he'll get hired quick if he wants to be? Absolutely. But the more information come out, I don't think this could have existed long term for a very long time. So if you were going to say, hey, let's go ahead and remove this piece right here so that we can grow, I fully understand it more now. That's where I'm at right now, Kayla. Where are you at?
Yeah, this is a hard one because I'm going to be honest with my answer in terms of I don't think Mike Vrabel technically didn't deserve one more year with Ran, and seeing what type of players he was able to bring in, what direction it went. But then when you think about it, that's not the direction Miss Amy Adams-Strunk wanted to go in because she does not want the head coach to have full roster control. Her vision at that point was different from Mike Vrabel. So when I look at this situation, I really do now say, I think it might be best for them both in terms of going different ways because it was just, and I know this analogy has been used a lot lately, but it really is a marriage that just kind of went its separate ways, did not work when it was all said and done, lost the love, whatever you want to call it. I think it's going to be best for both parties, but it is always on my mind, like what could have happened if he stayed at least another year and you saw progress.
So Buck Rising has confirmed a lot of this reporting, and if you heard Diana Rossini yesterday on the Buck Rising show, you heard a lot of those details that were written in The Athletic yesterday. And Buck talked about that on A2ZSports.com in a post last night saying multiple team sources confirmed that there was never animosity between Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel during the year they spent working together. Carthon could provide a buffer between Vrabel and finer roster, say, as the two worked out the kinks of their organizational construct. So again, confirming what we knew, that those two were working together, but that Mike Vrabel's priority in plan A was doing that with Ryan Cowden, who put together a lot of the draft board and was Mike Vrabel's guy that was under John Robinson. Now, that being said, Amy Adams-Strunk made the right decision in choosing Rand Carthon over Ryan Cowden, in my opinion, because if you're going to let go of a general manager, why does it make sense to then promote that general manager's deputy guy within the building? You needed outside voices, and the reporting in The Athletic yesterday said that Mike Vrabel believed Rand Carthon should be brought here as a number two. I don't think we know whether or not Rand Carthon even would have accepted the job with that in mind. But Buck Rising writing last night on A2ZSports.com, it is believed Amy Adams-Strunk's concern with giving Ryan Cowden the gig on a full-time basis was that it would be essentially turning personnel control over to Vrabel.
Yeah. And that's where the problem lies for me somewhat. And here's the thing about having that personnel control and roster control and management and stuff like that. For the guys that have done it from that Belichick tree, who's actually netted something good from it? Bill O'Brien had that control in Houston.
Didn't work.
Right? And if we're going to be honest about it, let's be real. Vrabel the last couple of years seemed like he's had his hands on it more than we possibly knew he had at the time. I think we look back now at the frustration that he and J-Rob had in that infamous draft day video. It may have been J-Rob saying, look, I'm going to do what I want to do. I am the GM in these moments right here. And it seemed like it was a slow grind to steady squeeze the neck of all control inside the building. And when you're an owner and it's your business and the results aren't there either, and you're still paying this type of money to those type of guys and it's not netting wins, your brand isn't being built the correct way, you got to out it. You have to. And it's no knock on Vrabel as a coach to say those things. But to say that he can manage or had earned all of those things, I think is somewhat questionable. I know Brian McFadden said, he thought Vrabel had earned it because of what he's done in the last couple of years. My personal opinion on that one is I don't think so.
And I think that's where the misunderstanding was with him and Miss Amy. I think he thought, I think I've earned it, and I think Amy Adams Strunk believes I've earned it. And that is not what that's not her mindset with this organization. Again, I don't think she's ever been one to be like, I'm going to let that coach have all the control. I don't think that was ever a thing for Amy Adams Strunk. I think Vrabel, though, thought because of the things he did, because J-Rob was gone, J-Rob was fired before Mike Vrabel, that, maybe I have earned this control. And in a way, you overstepped your boundaries. And then there were so many little things that happened throughout the season that irked Amy. It was like there was no coming back from it at that point.
In the F and Bank chat, Chris writes in and says, at Ramon Kayla Will, do you think another team would give Vrabel roster control?
That team has to be probably in the lowest of lows when you do that type of move.
Yeah, I think there's two questions there. How many teams in the Titans scenario with Mike Vrabel already there for 5 seasons would give roster control is probably a different question than how many available openings right now could be filled by Mike Vrabel as a head coach with roster control.
Yeah.
Because I don't think any right now.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think any. Or you got to be very low, Will.
I think the only way you earn that as a head coach in this league is if you are a Bill Belichick level coach that has succeeded within that context in the past, or if you are there for 4 or 5 seasons, the way Mike Vrabel was here, and you earn that within the structure of your organization with your owner and general manager over time. But I don't see any team that has an opening right now in the National Football League giving Mike Vrabel control over their roster when all of them are going to have sitting general managers other than, at this point, L.A. and Carolina?
Right.
Yeah.
And Diana also put that little nugget in the piece on The Athletic because she said, that is not what I believe Mike Vrabel's vision is going into this next coaching situation. He understands now that he's the new kid on the block. And yeah, he's a hot commodity in the coaching world right now, but not hot enough to say, hey, I'm going to be the GM too. So Diana did kind of confirm that wasn't his mindset going into the next job probably.
So when you look at the situation, it's fascinating to me when you speak about control. You know, you speak about what you want your organization to look like. And I think most head coaches, they have their plan, their philosophies, their culture setting rules, right, and guidelines, and you disperse that amongst your staff, and the staff disperse that amongst the players. And you kind of, my approach is I've seen coaches, you be a little bit more hands off. You're a little bit of a manager. What position did Vrabel actually coach, guys, here? I don't think he coached a position. He helped mostly outside linebackers in the defense and stuff like that. But when you look at the involvement of him on the sideline, I think you see where the problem can start to lie too. The over-involvement in every single position and the coaching up of what you want to do at times can somewhat muddy your decision-making, can somewhat muddy or honestly step on the toes of those position coaches too. And again, you got to commend Vrabel for being that passionate about his job. But sometimes your job as a head coach is just watch your soldiers do work and trust that they're going to do that work too. And I think that's where I don't want to say I don't know if that's where you say I don't trust the job of the GM and the front office and the scouts, that I think I can do it better. But we've seen Vrabel be on the sideline. At least I have watched him coach every single position. You know, guy I've told you about, like, he's everywhere. And on the surface level, it's like, man, he's passionate about his job. And it may also look like at times, well, heck, he's stepping on everybody's toes by being involved with everything that they do.
I can see where that comes from, too. I mean, every practice that I went to, I can't tell you one time that he sat at one spot. Like, he was with every single position, talking with players in the middle of individual drills or after a drill. So that was his style for sure. Whether or not that played well with the coaching staff, or at some points maybe they thought that was overstepping, I don't know. But you're right. Sometimes if you do an over amount, it kind of wears down the overall product of everything. And he should know that because John Robinson was doing the same exact thing as a general manager out there.
Crazy how that works.
To me, at this point, I'm willing to say that my knee-jerk reaction to Mike Vrabel losing his job is no longer the way that I feel. The more reporting we have in Buck Rising's post last night at AZsports.com that we'll link on our Twitter account at Ramon Kayla Will, tells me that Mike Vrabel overplayed his hand. Mike Vrabel is a good coach who will land on his feet and be successful somewhere else, whose relationship with ownership became stale because he wanted more control that ownership was unwilling to give him. I think at that point, this was the right decision.
Yeah.
It does not mean the Titans are not going to take a step backwards, and it doesn't mean that Amy Adams-Strunk was calculated as perhaps she would like us to believe in this. I do think the loss to Houston probably did give her a bit of an emotional knee-jerk reaction, as does embarrassing losses to Houston throughout Titans history. I mean, it lost Ken Whisenhunt his job, and Ken Whisenhunt obviously was much, much worse than Mike Vrabel ever was, and it isn't even in the same conversation. But losses to Houston mean a little bit more to this franchise, and I do think that is a bit of a red flag moving forward. So I think there's blame to be shared with the way this went on all fronts. And I still think that it is odd that Amy Adams-Strunk reportedly never talked about Mike Vrabel's speech in New England that Amy had issues with. They never discussed it. So I'm not absolving, her in saying that, look, she did everything perfectly. I think all sides will probably admit, though, if you sat them down totally honestly, that nobody handled this perfectly. No. However, I do ultimately at this point, by the end of this crazy week, think that Amy Adams-Strunk probably did make the right decision.
She made the decision that was best for her organization, and you have to respect that. And you know what? We don't know what way this organization is going to go at this point. That depends on the coach they get in here, how quickly they can turn it around, the staff that they bring in. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not going to happen overnight, folks. And there's going to be some frustrations. But overall, this was the time I think both had to go in different directions.
Let's go to the phones. Caples is in Springfield. First up, you can join us there at 615-737-1045. What's up, Caples?
Hey, what's up with y'all? I'm going to get right to it because I got a lot to say, and I know I ain't got that much time. But I just wanted to ask y'all, especially you, Kayla, because you were around the team. Would y'all say that J-Rob and Vrabel was making the decisions on player personnel, which kind of got the team and the roster in the bad shape that it's in? Or was it just J-Rob and Vrabel wasn't agreeing with it? Because, you kind of think about the A.J. Brown thing. Vrabel came out and said, as long as I'm the coach, he's going to be here. Then the next thing you know, he on TV frowning because Robinson traded A.J. So do y'all think it was both of them making the decisions, or was it just J-Rob? Because I'm wondering if Vrabel wanted power because he was tired of the roster he had. So that's my question.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how much. Go ahead, Kyle.
No, it's a great one. And I wanted to answer it while you're on there if you have any other questions. My whole thing about that, too, and it is so good to ask that because when J-Rob and Mike Vrabel were here together, I thoroughly believe that John Robinson had more of the power, and that's why it became a struggle because I think he wanted to make the decisions. So I think a lot of these roster moves that happened, not every single one of them, guys, because there were a couple that were Vrabel decisions for free agents that came in. Julio Jones was not one of them. That was not a Vrabel decision. No. But I think he did not have the full power of those rosters when J-Rob was here. Once J-Rob left, this last year, a lot of those free agents, I think Rand had some say, but I think Vrabel had a lot of say as well. But I think that's a reason, too, why the power struggle began, because J-Rob had most power of the roster in final say with all of that.
You got to give J-Rob some credit, too.
Thank you,
yeah.
Capers. Appreciate that.
At some of the stuff that he did before it actually turned
Absolutely.
down the drain, right? Like, he set this franchise up for some good stuff. I don't think we all can deny that. I do think it got somewhat emotional and too close for him. The crying to me at the combine, I think, was the straw that was just like, oh, okay, now you're working with emotions. We need to work with a business. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know people love the crying, and it shows, oh, he's passionate about it. But I'm sorry, I ain't ever seen a GM cry like that unless they were winning the Super Bowl.
He also got too big for his britches in gambling on injured players, and I think they hit Big Jeff in terms of hitting that selection in the first round, and it hit big. And after that, I felt like he felt like he could gamble a little with the injury situations and those high draft picks, and that screwed him over.
So with that being said, you see why there had to be a reset.
Yeah.
Like, all of this sounds bad if we put it up on the board and didn't put a team to it and said, this is how a team has been operating, I think all of us would look at it and say, oh, I wouldn't want to be a part of that organization.
I just think Vrabel deserves more blame in those draft picks, too. Mike Vrabel had to have known the Titans are going to take Isaiah Wilson. He had to have known that Caleb Farley was going to be the pick in the first round and that all of these guys were good. Like, it's not just like John Robinson locked him out of the draft room. I'm not saying y'all are saying that.
But he had final say, right?
He did, but especially with the draft, that to me is where Mike Vrabel deserves some of the blame in what they have added to this roster.
I'll give him that.
And Jadeveon Clowney, like, that was a Mike Vrabel guy he'd spent time with.
Right.
And
That's what I
Clowney
said,
is
some free
producing
agents.
with Baltimore the way he needed to produce here for how much he was getting paid.
Facts. And not only that, look at the person that you've kind of somewhat hung on to. Was Nate that bad? Could you have tried to make that happen, or did his attitude
Davis.
rub you the
Davis.
wrong? Nate Davis. Did his attitude rub you the wrong way? I know he's had been in and out of the lineup in Chicago, but you look at Brewer's situation here. You look at, oh my, Tierre, a known Vrabel guy.
Yeah, Brewer should never have been the starting center this year.
No.
Money Rice is another Vrabel guy.
But again, I think history will tell us how many of those guys you should have found a way to work with. David Long Jr. just finished the season, according to Pro Football Focus, as the best run defender in the NFL. You think you couldn't have made it work with him and tried to figure out, hey, how do I keep you healthy? Irrespective of everybody else in this team, how do I keep David Long Jr. healthy? Because it's that important to the defense. So I think history will tell us how many Tierre Tarts, David Long Jr.'s, Nate Davis's, Jack Conklin's. That one worked out elsewhere. I mean, there are guys that, like, higher draft capital guys that you invested a lot of money and a lot of draft capital in who are going to go elsewhere and be better. History will tell us whether or not that was a Mike Vrabel problem. 615-737-1045 our number. We'll switch gears for a moment when we come back. Unprecedented penalties for Florida State with an NIL collective and an arm of that will no longer be associated with football. Fascinating stuff and a precedent set by the NCAA. Details next. Hey, what's going on? It's Will Bowling here for my friends at Lee Company. Look, you know the weather is always unpredictable in Middle Tennessee. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. If you've not been paying attention to the weather the past couple of days, it's not going to be as unpredictable this weekend. It is going to be cold. Lee Company's going to help you with that. They're going to help you with everything in your home. A homeowner, business owner, listen, I'm going to give you details on other things Lee Company can help you with too. You know about the HVAC. What about light fixtures? You got a ceiling light fixture that flickers? Do you need an extra outlet or two? Do you have wall switches that don't seem to work? Well, these all seem to be simple issues. I promise you, they are rarely do-it-yourself projects. When I do it myself, I just make things worse. Dealing with electricity, that requires the expertise of an experienced professional. You need to call the pros over at Lee Company. Their electrical team can solve any problem you have safely and efficiently. And right now, you can enjoy $20 off any electrical service call for a limited time. That's $20 off an electrical service call from the folks at Lee Company. That call, 615-567-1000 or online at leecompany.com. 615-567-1000. That's Lee Company. All you need. RKW is brewed by 8th and Rose on a Friday morning in Nashville. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll reset the headlines on the first interview scheduled today for the Titans. Ian Rappaport with the latest on exactly who the Titans will be speaking to. Sorry, I'm just distracted by I'm thinking of Tony Soprano in the car singing this song as he's driving over the bridge.
Too good, dude.
I love this
Dirty
song.
work anymore. It is a great video that people put on Twitter all the time of like me on my way to, and then insert whatever they're on their way to do. Like me on my way to interview for the Tennessee Titans head coaching position, and it's just Tony Soprano. I don't want to do your dirty work anymore.
Can you save that?
Can we find the video of Tony Soprano singing it now?
Yeah, give me one
Brian,
second.
I was going to say, I'm sure it's out there.
They used this on another series too, and I can't remember what Netflix series this was used on, but it was something that it was like a main plot, right? And they were playing that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, what? Not Breaking Bad. What's the other one? The
Sons of
lawyer.
Anarchy.
Better Call Saul.
Better Call Saul.
I want to say it was off of a segment of that.
Ah,
And a
gotcha.
certain,
I don't remember that song as much.
it's a good one.
I am 10 episodes away from the finale. I'm very close. I thought about this real quick. We'll get to the Florida State stuff in a second. I thought about this.
But before you get to that, Tony Soprano
Oh,
singing
here you
Dirty
go.
Work.
Yeah, here you go.
Dirty work. Oh yeah.
I love that so much.
That's great. Dirty work.
I love that
That's
so much.
awesome.
I love it. I feel like I think I may do an instant reaction to whatever happens in the finale, like just on voice memos, just like quick thoughts, and then we can play it live on the show the day after I finish the finale. I feel like enough people have seen it, where again I'm not going to be spoiling the ending of The Sopranos for that many people.
No, it's like Lost. Like
I know.
if you don't know what happened already, like it's your fault. You know what I mean? No
And
one's
I
gonna
don't.
be upset.
I don't. Well, I know. I figured I don't want any of you to react in any way when I say that. No, it's fine. I'm not even going to go down that road. There will be a death of some sort at the end of it. I mean, that's obvious. But he always said he's either
Or
going to be
is it?
locked up or die. So, one or the other. 615-737-1045. Oh, another thing, by the way, real quick. Peyton yesterday on our walk, I mentioned my 3-mile walk with my girlfriend yesterday. She goes, yeah, there's a new TikTok trend on what's in for 2024 for girls. I was like, what's that? She said, dressing like the wife of a mob boss. What? I had a lot of follow-up questions. Who's coming up with these trends? Is it one person? Is it multiple people? Well, who decided in 2024 women are just going to start dressing like mob boss wives?
What?
Did
I know.
you guys watch the show Mob Wives when it
No.
was on?
I did.
God, I loved it.
I
I
loved
love
it.
trashy
Yes.
television. I don't know what it is.
I do too.
All of these women are in some way related to the mafia. So their dad, their husband, their brother, someone was in the mafia.
I think
Intriguing.
Gotti was his daughter. or
And they
something.
are all
I love John Gotti
insufferable.
stuff.
They are all insufferable. Yeah, there's got to be a free episode on YouTube or something. If you hadn't seen Mob Wives, go check out these entitled
Boy.
Italian women.
They can cuss like sailors too, man.
Yeah, they
Jeez.
do not give a bleep, dude, about
They
anything.
Go in.
Interesting. Let's go to Josh in Nashville. First up on the phone lines. What's up, Josh?
Good morning. Thanks for taking the call. I hope you guys are having a good day. I just think that, Vrabel, like you say, he's going to land on his feet. But I believe that, I hope that the guy that she hired, and we'll see, obviously outweighs the, losing the coach that, everybody's quite fond of. I think he done a good job, but there's so many pieces that get lost, and, I guess nobody saw it coming, and that's what made it so, so hard, so tough, like to see the passion and everything put in, and, all the players are buying into what he's selling, and that, you always want to see that, but you can't have a team divided, at the end of the day, you got a new stadium coming in, and, the right decisions that definitely have to be made. And I just wish them the best, and I hope that they're done. And a new stadium and a Super Bowl team comes to Nashville. That'd be the greatest result. So.
Yep.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate the call. I don't know if the team was divided as much as the front office was.
If you got coaches in front office, that's a bad place to be at. I don't think the players had any bearings on, in any kind of just gripe against one another. But this is a very interesting breakdown. It is.
For the culture to be still that intact in that way with that type of losing that went on this season, I thought that, and that's just as much as the players as it is the coach on them. I mean, I thought they did a great job of kind of keeping together, staying together, and most of them said that in their locker room interviews. So,
again, he had a way of making the players rally. Vrabel did. I think he cared. I think you heard the players that said that they love him, and it's not just as a coach. So it's fascinating that all held tight. But it seemed like the front office and coaches and the divide and the teams that you would have to pick moving forward with him was probably going to break this team down even more. And it's wild that this conversation is huge just on the basis of what's to come down the line as far as the stadium. Like, I knew a stadium was big time. I didn't know it was, going to be the focus point of football operations.
I think that's a question for Mike Keith as well coming up at 8:20. How much does he think the new stadium is going to make this an even bigger decision, or a decision that maybe wouldn't have been made to begin with? I don't think that's the case based on Buck's reporting last night specifically, but it's a good question. 615-737-1045. Florida State details coming up, plus the Titans with their first interview today, scheduled according to NFL.com's Ian Rappaport will tell you who and what to expect coming up next.
Good morning, 7 o'clock. What's going on from the 104.5 The Zone Studios? I'm Robert Walsh. Maybe Mike Vrabel is ahead of New England after all. Ian Rappaport reported yesterday Gerard Mayo, a strong candidate to replace Bill Belichick. And if he is the choice, the Patriots could simply hire him. No need to go through a lengthy hiring process, talking to a bunch of candidates because they established a firm contractual succession plan in a prior contract and communicated it to the NFL. So there is precedent with this as well. The Ravens did it with their general manager, Eric DeCosta. The Colts did it with Tony Dungy, and the Seahawks did it with Jim Mora. Playoff football this weekend, wild card weekend, and we have some injuries that were sustained at practice. Packers cornerback Jair Alexander and Browns cornerback Denzel Ward both suffered injuries during practice this week. Ward is officially questionable for Saturday's game versus Houston, with Grant Delpit, Dustin Hopkins, and wide receiver Cedric Tillman ruled out. Green Bay's final injury report comes out today. And in Philly, A.J. Brown not practicing due to a knee injury. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Seven a.m. in Nashville as your Friday morning begins on RKW. We are brewed up by 8th and Roast. Go by any of their 4 locations in Nashville today. Get you a hot cup of coffee, iced coffee. If you're a sicko and you still enjoy iced coffee when it's, 0 degrees outside coming up this weekend, that's possible. You can get behind that. It's good at 8th and Roast. You're still going to enjoy it. Get a bacon, egg, and cheese croissant, whatever floats your boat, over on 8th Avenue, Charlotte, or at the airport. Or you can check out their brand new location, the Broadview at Vanderbilt. 8th and Roast Coffee cultivates community by the cup. Coming up in 15 minutes, Brent Hubbs of VolQuest.com, his weekly visit on the show, as we will discuss a Tennessee target that is close to committing and a former Alabama commitment who might be on campus next weekend. In a name that you probably saw as the huge Alabama commitment that is no longer an Alabama commit after Nick Saban's retirement. 615-737-1045. Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh. I'm Will Bowling. Interesting following Chris Lowe's timeline on that, by the way, of the specifics of Nick Saban clearing out his office. There's a lot of speculation about how this succession plan is going to go in Tuscaloosa, and I am fascinated for every step of it.
Me too. I think I heard 3HL talking yesterday on my way to pick up some dinner that Nick Saban, do you think he'd be around? Like, do you think it would be smart to have him around the program still, or just to keep him away? I thought that was an interesting conversation.
He is such a control freak that there are going to be things that he has been managing within that building for years that now an army of people are going to have to start managing. Like, it's like when Dwight leaves the office and goes to Staples, and then all the plants start dying and all the toys are not rearranged on Michael Scott's desk. Who's what? I thought the cleaning crew did this. That was all Dwight.
It's all Dwight.
That was all Nick Saban.
Well, a guy like that is almost go this route. It's almost like having a funeral. Like, the longer you wait to actually have the ceremony, the more emotions, the more you think about it, the blacker the cloud over you on the moment of when we move on. Like, that's the way I look at it. And I ain't saying that they having a funeral in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, we're having a New Orleans funeral everywhere else in SEC
I saw
country.
the smirk on his doggone face. Get that smug
Give me my
off your
trumpet.
face.
Let's parade down Bourbon Street, baby. Come on.
Get that daggone smug look off your face. Well, I'm trying to have a real
Hey, we'll
good,
see you, bud.
I'm trying to have a real good story.
Enjoy the lake and the oatmeal cream pies.
And all
it's a New Orleans funeral for the rest of
all
us.
the golfing that he said he's going to do. But it is like those moments, like, the quicker you get the funeral and the body in the ground, the faster your grieving can happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are the 5 phases of grief? What are they? I don't have them off top.
I don't want to think about that. So I'm not, I'm like,
yeah, I don't have them. But it's like they're shocked, then they're upset, then they're sad, and then reality sets in, and then you move forward. However it goes, that's where they are right now. And the longer Nick Saban hangs around, the longer it lingers with his presence of how they operate. Like, and Bama fans, I don't know if you understand this, but like the idea that the coach behind the legacy coach fulfills those shoes and continue on. As far as the college level goes, it's about identity of the coaches, I think, for the most part, right? Especially with legacy dudes. So I ain't saying Alabama's going to be trash or nothing like that, but the idea that a coach is going to come in and say and do exactly as Nick says, or go the opposite way of what he's done in Alabama, like there's a lot that goes into how you go about building a organization or school moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm most fascinated in seeing how they get over. The more he's in that building and going to meetings and interviewing candidates, the longer the funeral goes on.
And nothing will ever compare to that. So you have to come in knowing that.
There's going to be people trying to jump in the casket, man.
According to NFL.com's Ian Rappaport, Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan, who has requests to interview for 4 of the open jobs, will speak with the Titans today. Chargers on Tuesday for the Bengals OC, the lieutenant to Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. The Panthers and Falcons will also be on the docket for him. We will give you later in the hour, coming up at 7:45, the rooting guide. Justin Graver of Titans Film Room on Twitter gave a rooting guide for Titans fans on the coaches that they would have to have virtual interviews with at the moment because of the nature of playoff games going on right now, and the coaches who are available right now. Brian Callahan, Mike Kafka, and Antonio Pierce, the ones who are available right now because they are not currently in the playoffs.
So does that give, in any way, these candidates an upper hand in terms of the hiring process? And I know it's just virtual, but do you think because they might be able to, if they bring a vision to Amy, which that's her biggest thing, she wants the vision to align, do you think that's any way an upper hand to some of these teams, coaches or assistants that are getting interviewed, that they're kind of seeing that early instead of waiting? Because you're going to interview everybody. Mm-hmm. But do you think if they see a vision from one of these guys early, like this could be one of the favorites out of the gate?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
They're going to find the right person regardless of whether they're still coaching right now or not.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's going to take a while. So don't expect this to be a 2-week process. I mean, I think this could take over a month.
Yeah, I don't think we're looking at Alabama's situation where they say they're looking to hire somebody in 48 hours.
They kind of have
this
to.
one we saw last time with Sean Payton. He was hired January 31st.
It depends on how far some of these teams go, right? Like if Ben Johnson is your guy and the Lions are in the Super Bowl, then yes. But I feel like this could still take 2 weeks.
The first coach last year was hired on January 26th. That was Frank Reich by the Panthers.
It's 2 weeks.
The 31st was the next coach to follow. So,
yeah,
it'll be a minute. You don't have. I mean, obviously, the nature of college football coaching cycles and NFL is so different because you don't have to recruit.
Right.
Like Alabama's trying to keep together a signing class and a transfer portal class at the moment, and they have a 30-day window of when they can recruit transfers since their playoff game was later, obviously, than everybody else's season ending. Mm-hmm. So Bama needs to get a coach ASAP as possible.
And it looks like Kalen DeBoer might be the favorite now.
Is it?
Looks like it. We'll see.
If you look inside the Titans' house right now, until you also say to yourself that right now it's time for Miss Amy and Rand to get their stuff together inside. That's scouting, that's coaches been dismissed or hired or whatever the case may be, too. There's a lot of assistants that got to know their fate real soon, too.
We'll get back to that later on here in hour one. But before we get to Brent Hubbs on the other side, I wanted to go through the details of Florida State and its unprecedented penalties, including 2 years probation and disassociating with its NIL collective for 1 season for violating rules on name, image, and likeness offers as a recruiting inducement. Which, what else are people using it for? Alex Atkins of Yahoo Sports, or by Yahoo Sports, that's the offensive coordinator for FSU, who is suspended 3 games for his involvement, and the university must disassociate with a specific booster for 3 years. This is the first time the NCAA has severed the relationship between a school and its collective as a part of an infractions case. It was a quick punishment as well. This was a, hey, this happened, and hey, here are the penalties, which is a welcomed sign from the NCAA. I'll give that as the only positive of this. But the NCAA did not identify Atkins by name, but said the assistant coach drove a prospect to a meeting with the head of the program's most prominent NIL collective during the prospect's official visit to campus. The prospect was not named by the NCAA, but was reported by the AP as Georgia tackle Lamarius Mims, who was a big Tennessee target when he was in high school as well. Marius Mims has turned into a stud, who you will hear called in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. At the meeting, the booster offered the prospect $15,000 per month and encouraged him to play for the Seminoles. While Mike Norvell was not named in this, and investigators did not find that he committed any violations, Yahoo Sports reported the booster involved was one of the leaders of Florida State's Rising Spear Collective. This is very interesting, and I'm curious to ask Brent Hubbs about it coming up in a few minutes on what kind of precedent this sets. Because it is odd that Florida State is getting penalized for something that everyone is doing. What is everyone else doing differently that Florida State didn't do in this scenario?
We'll see.
So, interesting. I don't think the penalties make a lot of sense. 2 years probation, loss of 5 scholarships over 2 years, $5,000 fine. The NIL rules were changed this week, yet you can't grandfather that in for what happened originally. So the organization literally adopted new recommendations on Thursday that permit schools to have more communication with collectives and facilitate deals with enrolled athletes. It is a non-serious penalty, in my opinion, to do this when you literally just changed rules of the NIL. Okay, well, we'll get Brent Hubbs' thoughts coming up next. Our weekly visit with Brent Hubbs of VolQuest on the other side. It's RKW 104.5 The Zone.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson for the Wang Vision Institute. Yes, they do everything when it comes to your eye health and do an excellent job at that, but they have also introduced intense pulse light treatments, a non-invasive cosmetic procedure, highly effective in addressing various skin concerns. I've had mine done, and in terms of my skin, it's absolutely incredible, and you're out in 30 minutes. Visit wangvisioninstitute.com for more information. Maybe you struggle with some sun damage, age spots from being out in the sun all those years, redness, or even uneven skin tone. IPL treatments can be highly effective in helping reduce all of that and appearance of fine lines, wrinkles, and acne. So do yourself a favor. Visit wangvisioninstitute.com today. They also offer free online vision seminars. That's every Tuesday at 6:45. Go RSVP now. Go to wangvisioninstitute.com.
Friday morning at RKW rolls on, brewed by 8th and Rose. Tremont Foster, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling with you. And when you hear the country music at 7:20 on Fridays, that means it is time to talk some Tennessee Vols with our very good friend Brent Hubbs of VolQuest and On 3. What's up, Brent? How are you?
I'm doing well. Hope you guys are doing well this morning.
Absolutely. Good morning, Brent.
We are great. We are bearing our, or just getting ready for the 0 degrees and frozen tundra and all the milk and bread that we can fit into our arms this weekend here in Middle Tennessee, Brent. But
so you feel like the Alabama nation this morning, walking through the wilderness without a coach, right?
Well, we said in the last segment, Brent, that while it may be a funeral in Tuscaloosa, it is a New Orleans funeral in every other SEC city after Nick Saban did not die, but announced his retirement as people give him oatmeal cream pies and all the things at his statue.
Yeah, it's an interesting that was kind of an interesting reaction that way. But hey, we'll see what happens. I think I think the resolution of that search, who they end up with, is going to be pretty interesting to see. And if I were a candidate for that job, the first question I would be asking, and listen, Nick Saban deserves any role he wants, but if I were a coaching candidate for that job who didn't have a great relationship with Nick Saban, I would have some curiosities as to what his role is going to be with an office on campus that he can come and go to whenever he wants to and be around practices and all those types of things. Because whoever comes in there has to be their own person. That job is going to be hard enough replacing the results of Nick Saban. It becomes even harder if Nick Saban is just hanging around campus on a regular basis.
And Brent, to that end, too, before we get to the Vols news and headlines this morning, we were having that conversation earlier this morning, too, that as much of a control freak as Nick Saban was, don't you feel like there are going to be things that people had no idea Nick Saban was just doing them himself, right, within that football program and athletic department? Like, I know you've been around some coaches, obviously, who were not as successful but wanted that level of control at Tennessee, and Derek Dooley's a guy that comes to mind that wanted all this control, and now Alabama's, NIL collective, just one of the things that people are going to have to pick up where Nick left off, and there's going to be an army of people doing the things that just he was doing, right?
Well, and I think one of the things that people – listen, Nick Saban's obviously a legend, and the X's and O's and getting his team to play the way that they played on the field each and every week with a consistency and how he adapted within the game is remarkable. But in talking to people that know Nick Saban, and even some people that have worked with him, lots of people have told me that fans, media, other people don't understand all the other things he did behind the scenes with that program. Whether it was relationships with donors, relationships with campus people, lots of things that he did that nobody ever wrote about, nobody ever knew about. He never took any kind of credit for. He never made a big deal out of it. That made that program continually to hum along at a real rate. And you got to figure all that out. Whoever the new coach is, right? And is Coach Saban really gonna relinquish control of all that? I mean, it's been hard at Oklahoma. And listen, Oklahoma's had some success, but it's not been easy at Oklahoma with Bob Stoops still hanging around for years, right? So I don't always think that's a challenging deal. And listen, who's going to go tell Nick Saban, hey, you can't come back to campus, you retired? You shouldn't do that. But I do think if you're a coaching candidate coming in, I would have questions about what exactly is that going to look like, because you have to be your own person and you have to run the program your way, and the program's going to take on a different personality, whoever the next coach is at Alabama.
Brent Hubbs of VolQuest, our guest this morning on RKW. Brent, let's talk Tennessee recruiting. Lance Hurd, the transfer from LSU, with a decision to make between Tennessee and Oklahoma. What's the latest with his recruitment, and how many problems on the offensive line are solved by bringing in the 6'5.5", 305 tackle?
Well, I mean, I think you solve a lot of problems. Now, you still have some depth concerns there, but, if you can bring him in and, he plays left and John Campbell flips to right, then all of a sudden you've bettered yourself on the offensive line. Or even if Campbell were to stay left and Hurd went to right, you've bettered yourself there, which is what you're looking to do. Now, when is that going to get done? Where is that at? I think Tennessee's in a great spot. Herd's not going to take a visit anywhere this weekend. So why is it not done? I think that they're just getting all their I's dotted and T's crossed, and Herd wants to make sure everything is what it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to look, and he's comfortable with his situation, and John Campbell's comfortable with it all. And I think this is just a matter of finishing everything out, which I think can be done as early as today or could be done over this weekend. I like where Tennessee's at there. But yeah, I mean, Tennessee had to have a tackle. And then when Gerald Mincey left, they really had to have a tackle. And Herd's a guy they targeted. They were targeting him from the week of the bowl site, and then got him on campus. And looks like they're going to be, in a great spot to beat out Oklahoma for him. And that's a huge portal get. I mean, when you talk about what were your two biggest portal needs, the two biggest portal needs you had were tight end and offensive tackle. And Holden Staves from Notre Dame is in the boat and on campus. And then you've got Herd, who I think they're in a great spot with right now, which is a real positive for Tennessee because it changes the outlook.
Brent, with George McIntyre, the big target on the board for Tennessee in 2025, a Tennessee-Alabama battle there. With Nick Saban's retirement, does that maybe change or move up a decision day for Tennessee's most coveted recruit in 2025?
I don't know that it moves up the day. I think the day's always been sometime this month. I think the question is, does it move back the timeline? Would George McIntyre want to slow things down, to wait and see who the next Alabama coach is and look at the Crimson Tide that way? I think that could be more of a possibility than speed it up. I mean, the one thing that, everybody's just assumed that Tennessee automatically lands George McIntyre now. And I think Tennessee's in a good spot, a really good spot with George. I think they've been in a good spot for a while. I think Nick Saban was the reason Alabama was where they were. So when he leaves, it's natural to say, hey, he's coming to Tennessee. But he could always wait and see what that program is going to look like, who the next coach is going to be, and then go from there. I mean, I haven't talked to George. It wouldn't surprise me if George McIntyre didn't have a conversation with Nick Saban yesterday, because Saban was reportedly in the office calling recruits. I'm sure telling them, hey, hang on, everything's going to be good, nothing's going to miss a beat down here, yada, yada, yada. But, I think if George McIntyre comes off the board this month, I think given where Tennessee has been throughout the whole process, that's probably not a bad thing for Tennessee.
Brent, good morning, man.
Good morning, sir.
We had a conversation the other day, a short one, man, as far as the continuation of legacy coaches and what it means to leave behind a university like Nick has right now, or you talk about Miami, or you talk about LSU and all these Texas. How big of the shoes they are to fill, number one, in the SEC, but also how big of a task is it for the coaches? Because one can argue that, and I heard Brent Daugherty say this to give credit to him, Nick Saban has done this, his job of keeping the SEC at the top of the mountaintop. What coaches have to do behind that right now?
Well, that's a great question, because Coach Saban elevated the status of the SEC and the brand nationally. He did. Now, other SEC programs have been successful. Tennessee won a title. You mentioned LSU, Steve Spurrier at Florida. It's not like the SEC was without success before Nick Saban rolled into LSU. But what Nick Saban did was create the model program that so many programs, so many schools around the country and around the SEC have tried to chase and tried to capture. And most have failed in doing that, right? But George is the exception, because they hired, they brought their favorite son home, and he's ran his Georgia program to successfully the way Nick Saban has at Alabama. But, I think that this league is strong. This league's going to keep winning. But, yeah, Nick Saban was a national brand, much more so than Ed Orgeron was, Les Miles was. Nick Saban was I mean, in some ways, not everybody was a fan of him, but in some ways, he was America's college football coach, right? Because if you said college football, somebody was saying Nick Saban's name early, often, and most of the time first. That's something we haven't seen in college football in a long, long, long time. And we're not going to see that moving forward. But the SEC should have enough strength to keep carrying and keep moving forward. But Coach Saban's voice in the game, personality in the game certainly elevated the SEC.
Brent Hubbs with us this morning, VolQuest. When it comes down to this year's or upcoming 2025 recruiting class, where are the Vols as far as this state's talents? Because I know Cameron Sparks is in the conversation, Ethan Utley's in it, and of course, Will just brought up George McIntyre, man. It'd be good to start off that good here inside the state.
Well, there's a reason Josh Heupel said at his press conference on signing day that he pointed out, and there was a recruiting message in there when he was asked about the in-state talent in 25, and he talked about how good it was and the importance of the in-state and how much Tennessee was coming after the in-state guys. And it's across the board. I mean, it's a quarterback, it's running backs, it's athletes, it's defensive linemen. It's in Memphis, it's in Chattanooga, it's in Nashville. I mean, this is a good year. I mean, 25 is a really nice year in the state of Tennessee, and that Tennessee's, got to capitalize on it. It starts with a junior day coming up later this month. You're trying to get as many of those guys on campus as you can get and continue to start that. They would dearly love to land George McIntyre, obviously, and they would dearly love to land him early because I think George is a guy who's going to recruit other people, and he's going to be working relationships. And a lot of people have talked, Ramon, about why Tennessee didn't get more out of Nico's commitment in terms of other recruits. Part of that is, Nico was in California, and you weren't recruiting 10 other guys in California. Okay, if you were to land George McIntyre, you're recruiting a bunch of guys in his hometown. You're recruiting a bunch of guys in the state within hours of him. Those are easier relationships to form to try to help peer recruit. So, it's huge in the state of Tennessee. That should be the foundation and the bones of this class, if you will, because of what this class looks like at 25 right now. Now, things could change, but the way it looks right now, this is a really good class at 25.
Brent Hubbs joining us now this morning on RKW. I always love that you're able to give us a timeline on, how the offseason goes. And right now, players going to start to come back into town. And there is a certain arrival, running back Peyton Lewis, who could be in that rotation next year.
Yeah, and, Sonny from Virginia, who was a midterm graduate but didn't get to come to bowl practice because the state of Virginia's academic calendar for high school is you have to go back after Christmas for final exams and completion of that semester. They don't complete their semester before Christmas, which meant he could not graduate early in terms of getting to bowl practice. So that's why he wasn't in Orlando and didn't go through bowl practice, but he will be in Knoxville and start classes on the 22nd when Tennessee resumes or starts their spring semester. He's a guy that everybody's high on. Really good speed. A track guy, but he's also got some size and some power to him. He's going to step into that room and have an impact in that room. Now, we all know it's Dylan Sampson's room. I think we liked what Cam Selden did in the bowl game and where he's at. But I think Peyton Lewis is a guy who could step in and be a factor early on as the third guy. I know a lot of people are excited about him on campus and curious to kind of see where he is when he gets, to workouts in the practice field. So that's a welcome addition for Tennessee. That's a little bit forgotten about because he didn't make it to bowl practice and gain a lot of attention that way.
And Brent Hubbs, some breaking news here. I don't know if we've ever done this on the show with you, but New England has just announced that they have hired Gerard Mayo as their next head coach of the Patriots. Perfect timing, I guess, for you to chime in on this.
Well, what a great guy. What a fantastic human being Gerard Mayo is. And I am super excited for him and the opportunity that he is getting to be a head coach in the NFL. One of the smartest guys I've ever met. A guy who matured into a big-time leader during his time at Tennessee. A guy who showed up and went to work every day. His teammates loved him. But he's a business guy. He's serious business, right? I mean, if you're a teammate of his, you didn't want to let him down. He was going to be prepared to go to play and do everything that he needed to do. And he's obviously learned from a pretty good coach in New England and has waited his turn. He's been patient, even though he's had some other interviews. I think he's been patient about some jobs out there. And I can't imagine how excited he is this morning. And I'm elated to him. He was one of my favorite guys to have covered at Tennessee. And I've covered a lot of great people, but just getting to know him and dealing with him from the time he arrived on campus till he left, how much he matured during that time, excited for him. And obviously that succession plan was in place when you look at the way that contract was written, as a couple of NFL national writers pointed out yesterday. So this, I think, was Robert Kraft's plan, whenever Bill Belichick's day was done. And I think that's why Gerard Mayo had remained there. And happy for him and happy for the opportunity he's getting. I know, Ramon, I know you're a fan. He's a good dude, right?
He actually FaceTimed us last night, man. It was on the phone with us. We all stayed together. It was 5 of us: Gerard, myself, Inky, Rob, and Sinclair Cannon.
That's a motley crew right there.
Yeah, that's a motley crew, man. And he was just like, man, I got to let you guys know something. And he brought us into it. And, man, we probably stayed on the phone on FaceTime for like 40 minutes last night, just talking to him. And the texts were back and forth and everything last night. Like, Sinclair woke up at like 4 o'clock this morning. Was like, man, I'm still excited. And we've all been sending stuff. We took at home took a shot for Mayo last night. Inky had water. Inky had water.
Okay.
But we all, you want to talk about a group of roommates, man, that we all had goals. And honestly, to see Gerard in this situation is beyond ecstatic for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that was, I don't want to digress this morning, but that collection of you guys as roommates and the relationship you guys have had and have continued to have. I've talked to Inky. I continue to talk to Inky. And you guys were life-changing for Inky after, the injury he had. And just excited for all you guys because I know how close you are.
It's safe to say, Brent, that I was probably not the only one as a kid who had a Casey Clausen jersey that turned into a Gerard Mayo jersey. So there are probably a lot of people listening to us this morning that could fit into that. Brent Hubbs of VolQuest, our guest this morning, as he is every Friday at 7:20. Brent, great stuff as always. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Appreciate it,
Brent.
There's Brent Hubbs with us this morning, and the breaking news, courtesy of Adam Schefter first. A new era in New England. The Patriots have hired Ramon Foster's old teammate Gerard Mayo as their next head coach. He will be formally introduced at a press conference next week. We'll get Ramon's reaction to his former teammate getting the job in New England coming up next.
It's Ramon Foster, Scoreboard Bar and Grill, calling all sports fanatics. We're turning up the heat with the ultimate Super Bowl Party for 6 giveaway. Imagine you and your crew enjoying the game on massive screens, mouth-watering bites, and a vibe that's second to none. Simply register to win this Friday. That's today from 3 to 6 while 3HL broadcasts live at Scoreboard Cedar Creek. But hold on to your hats. We've got more than just great sports talk lined up. You can enjoy some 2-for-1s, try to beat Brenton Slade's pick to win the $250 prize pack, and more. So don't miss your chance to snag a fantastic Super Bowl party for you and 5 of your friends. But you got to register Friday between 3 and 6 at Scoreboard Cedar Creek. And if you're headed downtown this weekend, get ready to spice up at Doc Holliday's Nashville go-to for the ultimate Bloody Mary experience. So dive into it with bold flavors and try their Sunny D shot for a burst of citrusy goodness. But the excitement doesn't just stop there. Bend the rules and savor the spirits at Whiskey Bent, your ultimate destination for the whiskey-fueled good time. So join us every day for the best in live music on Broadway.
Show moving right along as we wrap up the first half of the show on RKW, brewed by 8th and Roast. The breaking news this morning, courtesy of Adam Schefter in New England, former Tennessee linebacker Jerod Mayo, not former Tennessee Titans head coach. Mike Vrabel will be the head coach of the New England Patriots. Ramon Foster knows Jerod Mayo very well. Former teammates, former roommates in Knoxville. What's your initial reaction?
Excited. Still shocked that it actually happened. I thought Vrabel was going to throw I thought it was going to be the joker or the ace in the hole for that job, though, just honestly. Gerod's been talked about for the last couple of years as being the succession plan. But all in all, I thought it did get murky with the Vrabel conversation. But my feelings, excited, overly excited for my friend. Like, Brent Hubbs was correct in the last hour, in the last segment by saying, like, Gerod's always been about this. As a young guy, like, only decision I think it was flawed in his was he thought about transferring because he couldn't get number 7 initially. Okay? But kids and numbers in college, man, we all do crazy stuff. But he went to number 7, and from that time, he took off. When he tore his ACL, I never saw somebody work harder than what he did to get back. So much so he was a top 10 pick after that. And to see him grow into this, we saw Mayo being this from day one. Rob Ayers last night is also another one of my roommates. He said this about Mayo, and this is somewhat true. He was like, dang. He's like, man, here we go chasing you again, Mayo. And it's just, if you knew him in college and were around him, his mindset has always been that. Not to say that he planned on being an NFL head coach, but it was more than just the space he was in. I had a conversation with my boys about that type of stuff. Like, on the road to success, like, you have to keep the main thing. And Jerod Mayo did. And for the most part, if you're that type of person, you have. But it's cool watching one of your friends, best friends, in my wedding, roommate, turn into this right here, man. Whatever happens from here, as far as him and his success at New England, you got to tip your hat to it. 37 years old, getting a head coaching job, African-American. Also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the first one in Patriots history also.
Yeah.
In Boston. Some monumental stuff. And this ain't this isn't a concession for, hey, we're just giving it to you. No, he earned it. If you listen to him, he's a smart guy. We had him on, or we were talking about having him on for the UT coaching search. And from my understanding, there may have been some communication there. And he just said, no, I want to be an NFL head coach. And he chased those goals and got it, man. So I'm beyond excited for him. I always go back to now, what are we doing here in Nashville if Vrabel wasn't the actual plan in New England?
Well, and I wanted to go too. This is the list he's joining in terms of the last 3 head coaches before him: Bill Parcells, Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
That's incredible to see that he is going to be added to that list. And what's the next step he can take with an organization that really has had one way for a long time? And yeah, he'll probably take some things from Bill Belichick and some things he maybe used to run things in terms of that team. But I think it's refreshing. I think that there's going to be new ideas, like you said. He has a vision. I'm excited because I've heard about Mayo through you.
Yeah.
I'm excited for him. And as for Mike Vrabel, y'all, man, I'm now really like, I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know where he's going to land, because there are some good jobs out there.
Yeah.
He's kind of, in my opinion, got to at least give it a chance. But I also can see the fact, like Diana Rossini said yesterday, maybe he takes a year off and does some TV and gets back in the pool. But I think if you're going to want to continue to be a head coach, you've got to go now.
Yeah.
I think the thing that's interesting about Mike Vrabel, Diana Rossini of The Athletic just tweeting this 2 minutes ago, the New England Patriots never reached out to a single person, including the hot names like Jim Harbaugh, Mike Vrabel, or even Ben Johnson, per sources. They made their decision less than a day after firing Bill Belichick with a plan in place. Based on the phone call Ramon Foster said with Brent Hubbs that he had last night, that lines up with the timeline that we know.
It does. And there's more behind it. I tried to do something. I'm not in the news breaking business, but we had a smaller conversation immediately after that happened in New England. And, of course, you got to go through the rigors of it. But I think with the way Mayo's been hired, they don't have to really interview anybody. And he just told me it may have been Tuesday. Yo, I'm good. And I didn't know what that meant. Of course, with Vrabel being let go soon after that, I didn't know what that meant, and we finally got that answer now.
And
So, sorry, here's the quick question I want to ask about this as it pertains to Vrabel.
mm-hmm.
Yes or no? If Mike Vrabel is coaching next year, it's on a team that currently has a head coach as we talk right now. Because I think that's the case. I think the only teams that Mike Vrabel would go for that are currently open would be teams like the Dallas Cowboys or the Philadelphia Eagles, who have head coaches and are not expected to have openings. But is there a team out there right now with a head coach who sees Mike Vrabel sitting there and says, he's better than the guy we have now?
Is that Giants? No. Is that Philly?
Could be.
Philly?
Philly's the one that's interesting.
But then it's like with all the stuff that came from the players, and all the situations with Mike Vrabel here in Tennessee, and there was stuff about, we win here in Philadelphia. I don't know. I don't know if that's been muddied at all in terms of those players that came over there and the difference with the culture, so per se, is what everything is talked about with A.J. Brown and everything over there. I don't know if that would be a fit, but heck, it could be. I mean, he's that hard-nosed type of personality. He's that, you're gonna get what you're gonna get type of personality, and I think he could probably actually work over there. Could you just imagine? And maybe A.J. Brown, because he didn't want A.J. Brown to go. Maybe A.J. Brown would be like, you need to hire this guy.
Or Kevin Byard.
Yeah. You know what, Will? The more you say it, the more I would say maybe.
So, again, this was Buck Rising last night on A2ZSports.com. And, again, we'll tweet out the link to this article here in just a minute. Multiple sources close to Buck say that Vrabel have said not to rule out the idea of the coach taking some time off as opposed to jumping right into his next job. The last 2 years have been taxing on everyone in the Titans organization, including the ousted Vrabel. That is A2ZSports.com and 104.5 The Zone's Buck Rising reporting on that. And again, you can go to our Twitter at Ramon Kayla Will to read the full piece from Buck on that.
Jeez.
Interesting.
Holy smokes.
Let's continue the discussion on the other side. Your phone calls at 615-737-1045. Voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, is coming up at 8:20. Plus, Joel Klatt of Fox Sports says that he will be surprised if one coach is not the next head coach at Alabama. 3 names emerging in Tuscaloosa. We'll give you that list next.
Man. Join the Nashville Predators on Saturday, January 13th. That's tomorrow, as they take on the New York Islanders at 7 p.m. at Bridgestone Arena. It's a big Saturday night in Smashville. Plus, hockey is for everyone night. Yeah, celebration of all diversity in Smashville, and hockey is a sport for everyone. The NHL's United by Hockey Mobile Museum will be on the plaza for fans to enjoy before the game. The Traveling Museum is a free fan experience that celebrates hockey's trailblazers, the change makers, and business leaders spanning various demographics. So get your tickets for the game at NashvillePredators.com/tickets.
What's going on? Just about 8 o'clock. Good morning. From the 104.5 The Zone Studios, I'm Robert Walsh. Mike Vrabel isn't headed to New England after all. Ian Rappaport reported last night that Gerard Mayo was a strong candidate. Well, he was strong enough to get the job. They're going to announce him in a press conference next week, and the Patriots didn't have to interview anyone else. They could just simply hire him because last year they established a firm contractual succession plan in prior contract, and they communicated to the NFL. So, Gerard Mayo, the new head coach of the New England Patriots. Some injuries from around the league going into Wild Card weekend. Packers cornerback Jair Alexander and Browns cornerback Denzel Ward both suffered injuries during practice this week. Ward officially questionable for Saturday's game versus Houston, with safety Grant Delpit, their kicker Dustin Hopkins, and wide receiver Cedric Tillman all ruled out. Green Bay's final injury report will come out later today. And in Philadelphia, A.J. Brown not practicing due to a knee injury. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second half of the show starts right now on a Friday morning edition of RKW. We are brewed up by 8th and Roast, and the weather is so ugly outside that you need a good cup of coffee to get you going this morning. Yes, it's a Friday. Yes, you got the Friday energy, the vibes. You might need a little bit more of a pick-me-up to pick you up and throw you into Super Wildcard Weekend. Well, we've got just the thing for you. Go by and see 8th and Roast, one of their 4 locations, 8th Avenue, Charlotte, the Broadview at Vanderbilt, or the airport. Or you can stop by your local Kroger or Whole Foods, grab a retail bag. 8th and Roast Coffee cultivates community by the cup. 615-737-1045, our number. Voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, will join us in 20 minutes. Safe to say on a Friday that it is Friday, and we are successfully acting like it.
Yay. Yay.
No practices on Fridays anymore with this.
No practices on Friday.
I kind of miss it.
So will this tradition stay with the new head coach?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And do we do it just during the season too? Like these are some real things we got to get hashed out, because that's the only time I really hear it this often. Was when I was playing ball. I do too.
This might
keeps me going.
Come down to us interviewing the new head coach whenever we have our first sit down and making sure it's on a Friday.
Yeah.
And mentioning that this might need to be continued.
I like that, because Stretch was kind of in charge of playlists and stuff. So he put together some good ones too. And then, this has always been a part of that.
You just said his name and just made me realize, like, there's a lot of those familiar names and stuff that, it's they get a little bit of the blowback from Vrabel not being here. He's one of those guys.
Mm-hmm. And Stretch is awesome.
Yeah, he is. Super cool dude. The times I've run into him, golly, Kayla, I didn't register until now.
Quick recap of the headlines this morning on the Titans interview front. Brian Callahan, I was going to say the Cincinnati Bryans offensive coordinator, Bengal Callahan, who has requests to interview for 4 of the open jobs, will interview with the Titans today and with the Chargers on Tuesday, according to sources who spoke with NFL.com's Ian Rappaport. Falcons and Panthers also on the docket for him. If you missed the breaking news this morning, Gerard Mayo will be the next head coach of the New England Patriots. So that is one of Ramon Foster's former roommates that is now a head coach in the National Football League.
Pretty wild, man. What a group that was, though, with Mayo, Inky, we know who he is these days, Rob, who's now at UT also, and Sinclair Cannon running a business in South Carolina. Cool stuff. Your surroundings matter, man. That's where we formulated the plan, everybody eats.
Yeah.
You get it now? Like, everybody eats, man. If you just, everybody pointing towards the same thing. So, all in all, man, big for him. VFL, also, got to throw that out there. I know I'm a Patriot hater, and I told him that too, okay? So, it's not like I got to hide that anymore, but definitely in support of him. Again, my questions go to, again, how much did we play up, or how big of a deal it was with the conversation with Vrabel and Miss Amy and Kraft and the whole ceremony thing. I wonder, and that's my question, one of my questions I want to ask Mike Keefe, did words actually hurt Vrabel and Miss Amy's relationship?
Yeah, and I think communication hurt it, right? Because there was a little assuming that happened with this, I think.
It was, Kayla,
I
a
really
lot
do.
of it.
And because, as Diana Rossini had put out here recently this morning, they didn't reach out to anybody, the Patriots.
Yeah.
And so I don't think Mike Vrabel would be that stupid to assume he was going to get this job in New England because he knows Robert Kraft and he went and put on the red jacket. This brings up to me now even more questions. I think he did want to be here, but I think he still misread the situation here, that he was going to be given that power.
It's almost like he tried to flex it. It is. Like he almost tried to flex it. Like, what does a Vrabel Rand team look like? No pun intended with Rand right there. But
I was actually,
yeah.
I thought you had something there.
We have an update on another candidate who will interview with the Titans this weekend. Mike Garafolo, NFL Network, reporting that the Titans will interview Raiders interim coach Antonio Pierce this weekend, saying while he firmly remains in the mix for the Raiders job, Pierce is exploring all options.
He has
Love
to.
it.
I'm just fascinated into that interim coach jump that we always talk about. Well, I think that was one of your Thursday threes or something like that when the interim coach goes in and the team catches a spark behind it. Like, you got an abused team at the time. You had a team that was really on the low as far as what Josh McDaniels had done there. And then you come in with new energy. How sustainable is that? I'm not denying that he can't do it. And I'm sure his philosophies from him coming from college to the NFL can translate over to what this team should be capable of doing as far as the communication, as far as the expectations, too. I want to see how far Antonio Pierce goes with these interviews and when and if he's hired for a team.
He's also a former player.
Yeah.
A lot of the head coaches that have coached for the Titans recently have been former players, right? And all with different personalities. I also wonder, and this isn't going to go into like the end-all be-all decision, but is it a reset in the way that you go in terms of not that former player that kind of is close to the situation in terms of just recently playing or just have played at all? Because Mike McDaniels, we all talk about what he's done down in Miami. Now, that's yet to see if that is actually sustainable down there, too, with what he's doing. But this is a guy that's completely different from your former player.
Right. It is. Again, I just don't want the Antonio Pierce situation because he's so new on the forefront of being a head coach to have just had the Raiders in a rah-rah situation. You know,
And
like,
I get that.
this is a fragile, I was going to say university. It's a fragile franchise right now when it comes down to the expectation
We've got some
of this
lightning
group,
and thunder here.
this team here rebuilding. You got a second-year quarterback that this franchise is dependent upon. And, of course, he's got to sell Miss Amy and Rand on those type of things when it comes to Antonio
vision.
Pierce. Yep.
Elsewhere in coaching searches, Alabama down to 3 names, according to ESPN.com's Adam Rittenberg last night. That's not necessarily down to 3 names, but the exact wording of the tweet last night at 7:15, the most recent update, lines up with what Joel Klatt of Fox Sports was saying yesterday as well. Adam Rittenberg, the 3 names I heard for Alabama: Washington's Kalen DeBoer, Florida State's Mike Norvell, and Alabama offensive coordinator Tommy Rees seem to be the most prominent possibilities, especially with Dan Lanning out. Source said DeBoer is heavily in the mix. Joel Klatt added yesterday with Colin Cowherd that he would be surprised if Kalen DeBoer was not the head coach at Alabama.
Kalen DeBoer. I don't know much about DeBoer as far as his lineage and what he's done. I know what Washington did this year. I just don't know if what Washington did this year was respectfully, conference if it was also the quarterback being as old as he was, and also is it a TCU type of situation?
So Kalen DeBoer had 3 years as a national championship coach at NAIA Sioux Falls. He went 67-3 there. His record as a head coach is 104-12 in his career.
Yeah.
He's a winner.
Okay, he's a winner.
My thoughts on him, I watched a lot of Washington football the past couple of years.
Yeah.
He's a hell of a coach.
Okay.
He really is. I mean, to be able to do with the things that they have at Washington in terms of access and just the recruits they get in, you might not know this, but it's not close to programs like Oregon and USC. They've done a really good job of building that program up, especially nowadays with Kalen DeBoer. I just think the coaching, he is a real good coach, and he's really helped develop some of those players. So I don't know if that's in Alabama.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can sustain it, and that's a different place, guys. Alabama is a different place. That is night and day from Washington in terms of just the expectations from the Northwest to the South.
Yeah.
I got a firsthand taste of that when I got my first full-time sports job in Montgomery, Alabama. It's different.
So you're talking about the transition from
Absolutely.
him coming from West Coast to Bama?
It's a different type
Yeah.
of intensity.
Yeah.
And so you've got to know you've got everything at your hands now to make it right. But he's got to be sure in his career right now that he is able to handle what's about to come.
It's real.
While competing for a national championship, Washington's 2024 recruiting class ranks 36th in the 247 Sports team rankings.
I just wonder, is that a product of, Washington itself or them moving to the Big Ten and stuff like that? That's the same thing that you deal. If you're not SC, it seems like for the most part, USC, Oregon, you really got to battle if coming out of the Pac-12 for recruiting. So it depends upon what he does in the transfer portal, if Washington is going to be good and he stays there, or if he comes to Alabama, like Kayla said, changing where he know how to recruit, like regionally. And he'll have a staff to point him in the right direction, I'd expect. But I just didn't know a whole lot about him. He's a winner. He just hadn't been on my radar the way somebody like Norvell has or something.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a really interesting move. I think the concern for Kalen DeBoer would be, does he get eaten up by the boosters and the politics and the variables and the things that Nick Saban has been doing himself? Kalen DeBoer has a good demeanor, and he's a calm, even keel kind of guy. He's not the guy that's going to be jumping up and down, screaming at referees, screaming at players. Like, he has that same kind of steady personality that Nick Saban has and was known for on the Alabama sidelines. I don't think he's going to be as much of a rah-rah guy as others.
So are we talking about asking that of him the same way Brian Harsin to Auburn situation of people getting involved?
Yes, because that was my next point. When Mike Price left Washington State to go to Alabama, they did not like him before he even was technically hired there. He was out.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some things that happened down there, but if they don't like him even in the first season, if they don't see progress, there are enough boosters there. There is enough money there. He'll be out.
Yeah. I think Auburn is I guess a warning to coaches that coming from out of conference like that at times, especially it seemed like West Coast or Midwest or something.
I mean, it worked for Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly went from Notre Dame to LSU and made the SEC championship in year one. But again, there are still questions about Brian Kelly's longevity within the league and his ability to rise to the occasion in that context. But Brian Kelly has been a better recruiter at LSU than he was at Notre Dame. And there are opportunities to rise to the occasion when you have the Alabama brand to recruit to.
Mm-hmm.
I have mixed feelings. I think Kalen DeBoer is the best option available to Alabama right now. If Steve Sarkisian, Dan Lanning are no's, then I think Kalen DeBoer is a better fit there than Mike Norvell. I just think there is also a very low floor as to what that could be. Because, I mean, it's hard to compare that to Brian Harsin at Auburn because Kalen DeBoer has coached for a national championship.
Okay.
And he's been a winner at every single stop that he's had. I mean, he has 12 losses as a head coach in his career. It's hard to find a head coach with that kind of, track record.
Still just another level, guys. It's another level.
It is.
Are we hoping for DeBoer so that they tumble?
See,
No,
if
'cause I
I'm
like
if I'm a
Brent
Tennessee
Hubbs.
fan,
And I hate Washington, and I like him.
if I want Alabama's downfall, then I hope they
Right?
hire Dabo Sweeney and
Oh,
go
yeah.
that way. But that's not going to happen.
By the way, I got pranked last night on that one.
Did
so,
you?
Yeah,
You
by my
gotta tell us
husband.
later.
Ugh.
Coming up next, Voice of the Titans Mike Keith talks us through the Titans head coach search. I'm interested when Amy Adams Strunk talked to him. What stood out the most from that conversation from the perspective of the Vaught? He'll join us next. RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast on 104.5 The Zone, and this music can only mean one thing. Time to talk with Avant. Voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, joining us right now with just a little bit to talk about on a big week here in Nashville. Mike, how are you?
Good morning.
Morning, Mike.
Morning, Mike.
Mike, wanted to start with your conversation with Amy Adams-Strunk, a great conversation, and what stuck out to you the most from what she had to say as a coaching search begins and a new era of Titans football is on the horizon?
Well, I think the biggest thing that she said that really got my attention is that she's going to make clear after this hire how it's all going to fit together in terms of the roles with who controls the 53 and who answers to whom. And, that was a big question last year when it all went down with Ran Carthon being hired. I think there was a feeling that things would fit together better than what they did. And I think she feels like one thing that she can do to kind of make the transition to the new head coach, and with Ran Carthon entering year 2 and his personnel staff, is make things clear for everybody. And so that to me was the biggest takeaway.
And Mike, Amy said in her statement as well, she wants a fresh approach to the coaching staff, like you mentioned. And as you look around the league at playoff teams and at places where things are working well between ownership, front office, and head coach all working within the same vein, what are some of those common traits do you see of some of those winning franchises that you think the Titans are looking to emulate?
Well, I think you're looking at Detroit, with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and a staff of people. The 2 coordinators are interviewing for head coaching jobs. You see kind of the power structure where things are spread across a lot of people. And what I mean by that is I think her vision is something like a Detroit, like a San Francisco, like a Cleveland, where you're trying to take every aspect that you possibly can, and that those people feel like they get in a room and that everybody is able to give that input. Now, there's obviously going to be one decision maker, but you set that up from the start, is Amy's feeling. You set up that room to be that kind of relationship. It's different. It's new. It's not what I came into the league seeing. It's not what Ramon played under in his time at Pittsburgh. It's something that's really started to happen in the last 5 years, maybe 10 years. But those teams, Amy feels like, have the ability to be more consistent against the cap with their personnel, with their week-to-week performance, if they encounter injuries, all of these sorts of things. That's where that comes from. And that's what this entire vision in terms of the being able to put everybody together can be. It's not just analytics. People say, well, it's analytics. No, it's not just analytics. It's really some of everything. What is the valuation of a position like on a roster towards a salary cap? We talked about this on the OTP with Coach Mack and Rhett that came out yesterday. And that is, you're, especially at this moment, you're at a reset with all this cap room you've got. How do you set your cap so that you're going to be good in 24, 25, 26, and 27, and, be able to have the sustainability? At this moment where the Titans get to have a financial reset, she wants as many voices in the room as possible. And that's what this comes down to.
Mike, when you look at this entire situation all of this week, man, words, right? Words, they control emotions, feelings. Looking at the stuff that's come out about, Vrabel's Hall of Fame speech in New England, how much of that was an impact upon, what Miss Amy saw and read and heard versus what actually happened as far as him being let go?
I can't know that because, that's not a conversation I have with her. But, I think lots of things come into play with human beings. A lot of things happen in certain situations that we're not always privy to on a daily basis as we go about our jobs, even if you're in the building. That's not something that comes up on my pay grade as we get ready to play the Chargers. But do things like that happen? Sure they do. Absolutely they do. And, will there be things that come out of New England about Belichick and Robert Kraft? Yeah. I mean, because they're people. So what are the specifics and how did they play in that way? I can't tell you because I don't know what weight everything has. But do things like that happen? Of course they do. Yeah. I mean, sure. Things come up at different points. But, I go back to Amy's whole thing is Amy doesn't like to lose. She's not really crazy about losing. And when things like that come up with the other stuff, I think it is compounded dramatically by the fact that we weren't winning enough. If it had been the other way, I don't think it would have been much of an issue.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of winning too, the new house that's going to be built here in Nashville as far as the stadium's concerned, how much of that has added pressure into this team moving in that direction where they know there's a hierarchy and a pecking order and decision making, and hey, the front office separates itself from the coaches, and coaches, hey, let us do work and tell us what you need, has made a play in this being more pressure as far as this Tennessee Titans organization has, Mike?
I would ask the same question, Ramon, because I think that's out there. I don't think it's a big factor yet.
Okay.
I think if we were at 2026, it would be a big factor. But, I mean, we just started 2024, so I don't think the new stadium factors deeply into this particular decision. I think this is a vision that she started to get in 2022. And it's one of the things that led her to hire Rand Carthon because she wanted to do a reset. And I think she sees this as a vision for being a contender to win championships over a consistent period of time. And that's what she wants. She wants to avoid the dips and things like that if they can be avoided. In some cases, maybe they can. But this is where all of it is right now with this financial reset. Because you think about this, guys, we've never been at a moment like this where we could totally reset our salary cap. And you're not just resetting it. You see all the room for this year, and that's great. But that's not really what you're resetting against. You're resetting against how it fits together so the cap is not a factor in terms of being an issue towards your progress for several years to come. How do you make this cap work for you so that you can have a good team for several years to come? And if that's the case, that would obviously be at the point you're going into the new stadium. So it would certainly correlate in that way, but I don't think there was any of this. Boy, we better get this straight right now because, we're moving into that new stadium.
Mike Keith joining us, of course, the voice of the Tennessee Titans now on RKW. So, Mike, when you begin the coaching search, and clearly, it's starting now, and they wanted to get out in front of that, and you asked Amy Adams-Strunk about that, and she said that you guys didn't want to be left in the dust in terms of hiring a head coach, and you needed to get in all the right candidates. So with this process, Mike, I'm curious, is who all is really involved in the hiring of this new head coach? How much is it Rand who has a say? How much is it Amy? And is there any other moving parts to that?
Amy has the say. I mean, make no mistake about it. Amy's going to make the call on the coach. There are going to be a lot of recommendations, and she's going to listen to a lot of opinions. But Amy, everybody that's been hired since she's been the controlling owner, she's made the say. The people that they're bringing into the process, I think it's an interesting group of people. And you understand that when you're hiring a head coach, you're not hiring an offensive or a defensive coach. you're hiring somebody that has so many different duties and has so many different things to get running to be able to make the ship go, to make the trains run on time. And you're looking for somebody who's organized. You're looking for someone who's motivated. You're looking for, different people who can get the entire building excited. If they do have expertise on one side of the ball, great. But that is no proof of success as a head coach in any way, shape, or form. And we've seen that ourselves here. So to limit it to, and I ask her flat out about, is it going to be an offensive coach? Because, I know she wants more offense. We all, if you follow the Titans, you want more offense. And, she made clear that that was not going to be the preference to her. It was going to be the right person. And so that's, it's going to be largely what appeals to her based on what Ran Carthon is able to come with, the relationships that a Chad Brinker or an Anthony Robinson might have. Other people in the ownership group, certainly Kenneth and Barkley Adams have been very involved at different times. In the end, though, it's Amy.
Mike, when it comes to just maintaining any type of the staff that was already here, I think some people might be confused with how that process goes. Tell us a little bit about, if anybody will be retained, or is that a situation where it's just an absolute reset?
Well, I think there are people you want to have retained, that people that you would like to see stay, but ultimately that's at the comfort of the head coach. Arthur Smith was recommended by general managers to 3 different head coaches. And so the new head coaches were told by the GM, hey, listen, Arthur Smith's pretty good. And he stayed. That will be what will happen again. They'll say, listen, you may want to look at so-and-so because he's really, really good. And we liked him. We felt really great about what he did, or she did, in the case of Low Locust. Mm-hmm. And, this will be a situation that you'll want to consider this. But, it's got to be at the comfort of the head coach. I think if the head coach says, hey, listen, I've really got somebody for this role, I don't feel like this person fits, I don't think they're going to force anybody on a head coach. But sure, would I be surprised if people are retained? No. Absolutely not. There's some really good coaches on that staff.
Voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, our guest. Mike, how much do you think Ran Carthon has learned on the job in his first year? I know you get to interact with him in just the conversations he's had with the media, the things that he has done in his first year as a general manager in his career. What stands out from your interactions with him and his ability to, as Amy Adams Strunk said, meet this moment with the organization?
I think he understands who the Titans are. I think he understands where the roster is, where the holes are, where the promise is. I think he has a great understanding of what Amy Adams Strunk wants this place to look like, which is a big deal. So I think the year he used it exceedingly well in working hard. And the thing that impressed me about Ran Carthon, and, we had a production meeting with him every week for Titans Radio, and I don't think he would mind me saying this. The thing that became clear to me in every one of the production meetings that we had is his attitude is, what can I give to help Mike Vrabel and the staff win the game this week? What do we need to do? Do we need to call a guy up? Do we need to sign a guy? Do we need to play a guy more? He clearly had thoughts because he's a general manager of an NFL team, but he had so much synergy with the football staff in trying to give them what they wanted to win and what they needed to win. It was impressive. It was very, very impressive, the nature that he brought to that part of it in year one. And I think he'll continue to expand on. Ran Carthon was a football player. He played at Florida. He played in the NFL. Like anybody else who is a football player who has that in their background, he wants to win. And he's not going to show all his cards every single day. He's not a big "what about me" guy. That's not going to be his nature. And even in these meetings, it became apparent that he's like, man, we've got to, we've got to get them an extra offensive tackle or an extra defensive lineman or a defensive back up this week in order to help with the game plan, in order to help beat Jacksonville. And that, I think moving from that standpoint to a greater role, and certainly I think he's going to have a greater role publicly, it was impressive. And I think it will be fun to watch him develop in this process after a year of looking at it the way he has.
He is voice of the Titans. Mike Keith joining us this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Mike, I know it is a crazy week. Thank you so much for a couple minutes.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Have a
Thanks,
great week.
Mike.
Yes, sir. You as well. There's the VOT.
Yep.
Voice of the Titans, Mike Keith. Some things to react to there. And a former Titans executive who has been floated for a job in New England. And no, his name is not Mike Vrabel. Details next.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson for the Ingram Agency, where protection is our promise. And you might be wondering the backstory of the Ingram Agency. Well, they've got a legacy that began in 2010, and they've spent over a decade ensuring that our neighbors can truly rest easy as one of the largest insurance agencies in the region. They built their reputation on foundation of knowledge, commitment, and unparalleled service. Chris Ingram and his folks do a great job here in Middle Tennessee, really serving the entire state. Maybe you're thinking about getting life insurance, home insurance, even aviation or car insurance. They are the ones to go with. And by the way, and speaking of life insurance, which sometimes we overlook, did you know that about half the households in America don't have any life insurance? And most that do have life insurance that don't have enough. So the Ingram Agency offers complimentary reviews of current life insurance policies, and then they can assist you in closing any gaps that could lead to financial devastation if something were to happen to someone you care about. So go with an agency that you can trust. Check out the Ingram Agency, www.ingramagency.com.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast as we wrap up hour number 3 on 104.5 The Zone. 615-737-1045. On Twitter this morning, my brother tweets in at West Bowling TN. Shout out to the TSA agent who asked if Will was my son. Then proceeded to tell me he listens to Ramon, Kale, and Will every morning. 1 out of 2 ain't bad.
Great.
I'll take
So he
that.
asked your brother if you were his son.
You guys would be shocked.
Wow.
You would be shocked to learn how much that happens.
Yeah.
No, Wes was not 12 or as a father when I was born. Wes was 12 when I was born, but he was not.
Oh my gosh.
He was not that. He's my brother.
It's
Messed
great.
up.
So
That's
anyway.
messed up.
It's great.
615-737-1045. I did not have this on my bingo card this morning, but nevertheless, a report out of New England. Ian Rappaport writing, as the Patriots plot out a new direction and set out to hire a GM, a few names to consider with ties to New England. Former Raiders GM Dave Ziegler, Chiefs assistant GM Mike Borgonzi, my bad, sorry. 49ers assistant GM Adam Peters, Bengals executive Trey Brown, former Titans GM John Robinson.
Ooh.
Dun, 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 dun.
I want to see if Mayo have a talk with me about that.
Former
before.
Titans GM John Robinson, a name to think of in ties to a GM search for the New England Patriots.
You usually always go back to the same sources. You do. It's a matter of John Robinson gets a second opportunity, which he has no hurry. I don't think he's in a hurry right now to be hired because he's probably still been paid out at some point too or got a buyout or something. But you hopefully for those type of people that get second opportunities, learn from it. The same thing, I'm sure Vrabel's going to change some stuff around the next time he gets hired. Or we've watched Mike McCarthy. Has he changed much at all in Dallas? Not really.
He's been better than I expected.
Yeah, a little bit, but this weekend's telling.
It's always that, though. It is the same retread. It's familiarity with every situation. And he's been inside that building for a while. After reading John Robinson's bio a while back, I didn't realize he was that embedded in New England culture like that.
And that's the thing we were talking about earlier, right? With Mayo now the head coach and Bill Belichick gone after all these years, there's still going to be a way in terms of how they do things there because it is such a franchise that you look at that has had success under Robert Kraft as the owner. So there's going to be some things that he wants to do the same. But how much does he want to do the same? That's the big question. And if you go with someone like John Robinson, who his track record now is just a little bit iffy with his time here in Tennessee, do you want that? And I get, though, the familiarity of it. But it will be interesting if they go with that, how much they really go in a different direction or they stay the same.
Yeah. It's fascinating. So a lot has to happen, but we're watching right now also New England go to a general manager. The fact they're about to interview and introduce one also. But looking at this, they got the head coach and getting GM. Like, depending on how their working relationship goes, it'll be fascinating to see what happens here now that Rand is going to be hiring a head coach here. But it has to work. Whatever and whoever you hire, those relationships have to work. And it can't be a separation. We can't be having a conversation about who has the biggest power, or the most power in the building when it comes down to what happens here in Nashville, or we're speaking about the New England situation with J-Rob, if he's hired there too. Does he learn from injured draft picks?
Right.
You could make the argument that everything fell apart during COVID for J-Rob. And I still am of the opinion, I've said it on the show before, that I don't think someone as old school football as John Robinson handled COVID and virtual interviews as well as more forward-thinking GMs and organizations did. And I think if I'm John Robinson's agent and if I'm John Robinson, I'm saying that's what happened. I couldn't tell Isaiah Wilson was going to be a flop over Zoom. And maybe if I'd met him in person, I could have. I'm not saying that's completely what happened. Obviously, that's a layered issue. But in the post-COVID NFL world, if I'm John Robinson's representatives, that is the pitch that I am giving New England and any other possible employer. I also think he's going to have to go somewhere and be a number 2 again before he's a number 1 somewhere.
I think so too.
And maybe that place is New England.
It may be.
Maybe he's under the GM that they hire, right?
Yeah. He
An
can be in the
assistant?
front office. I think he's smart enough because look at the players
Sure.
that he brought here. He's smart enough to know what he's doing. I do think power and money takes you to a different place.
And he knows the operations of New England. I think that's important for whoever they hire, maybe to have a guy that knows what goes on there inside and out.
And one thing we've heard here is this one word, ego. Ego plays a part in it, whether that was him, whether that was Vrabel, whether that was whoever. Like, seriously, the ego aspect of I need credit or watch me do work or look what I've built is something that probably drove both of them insane and at that point probably trickled down to Vrabel too. That's why we're here right now.
Quickly on the way out to finish hour 3, if you are into conspiracy theories and into interviews that get canceled and lead to coaches taking jobs elsewhere, Kalen DeBoer is not doing his hit in Seattle this morning on 93.3 FM.
That's where it starts.
They tweeted, Husky fans, we know you are looking forward to a visit with Coach DeBoer this morning. Please understand that Coach DeBoer and UW Athletics are continuing to work towards a future we can all be excited about. At this time, Coach will not be joining us this morning, but we will reschedule our interview soon. Yeah, good luck with that.
Sorry, Fuskies.
Are y'all shocked that nobody's jumping on the Bama job like that? Like, what if they work out a deal with them?
They could.
Wow.
Interesting. Who is the best Alabama coach for non-Alabama fans?
Butch Jones.
Well,
You mean he's not the water boy?
Respect.
fair enough.
Respect.
Maybe as a water boy. That would be funny.
I'd love to see him smoke a cigar with his own team down there.
Chris in the F&M Bank chat on Twitter, the praise pouring in to my brother's tweet says, Kayla makes that show good. Will Boiling, not so much. Too much little UT homerism. I wonder who Will Boiling is.
I never heard
Who's
of
that?
Is it the misspelling
You
again?
know who else is a UT homerism? This guy. Me.
There it is.
And we'll never apologize.
Take the eye out of bowling. Well, leave the one eye. Take the other one out. It's not boiling. The only thing that's boiling is my temper. 4th hour next.
Hey, joined now by our good friend and certified arborist Dean Glasscock of Save a Tree. And Dean, we've felt it and heard it actually, outside and then even hearing it inside the studio. We've got high winds here in Middle Tennessee. What can you guys do to help those trees and shrubs in a time like this?
Hey there. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Yeah, that's right. The winds are coming, and we thought we might want to talk about that. We normally, this time of year, talking about winter pruning, but let's talk about preservation of your mature trees around your home. If you have large mature trees that you love and that you appreciate and you hold value in, you should pick up the phone and call us, 299-9999. I've been saying it for almost 30 years now. Saveatree.com as well. So just give us a call. We'll come out for free and do an assessment, a visual assessment, and tell you what we see. What's that mean? Well, I'm a certified arborist, and we have other certified arborists on staff as well. We'll come out and we'll look for weak connections in your trees, or maybe some decay, or there may be some things around the buttress root of the tree down in the ground that we can see that you may not understand. We can tell you how safe your trees are. We're going to be truthful and transparent like we've always been. We want to serve you. That's the big one right there. We want to serve you. So watch out for those door knockers out there after these storms. Make sure you give us a call, 615-299-9999. We want to serve you. You all have a great weekend. Be safe.
Thank you, Dean. They are the experts, 29 years of experience. And you heard Dean. Give them a call, 615-299-99, or just simply log online to saveatree.com.
9 o'clock. Good morning, Nashville. What's going on? From the 104.5 The Zone Studios, I'm Robert Walsh. Maybe Vrabel isn't headed to New England after all. After the Patriots announced this morning Gerard Mayo was going to be their new head coach, the youngest coach in the league at 37 years old, and they didn't have to go through a lengthy hiring process either because they established a firm contractual succession plan last year in the prior contract and communicated it to the NFL. There's precedent in it. The Ravens did this with their general manager, Eric DeCosta. The Colts did it with Tony Dungy, and the Seahawks did it with Jim Mora. Some injuries to be aware of heading into Wild Card Weekend. Packers cornerback Jair Alexander and Browns cornerback Denzel Ward both suffered injuries in practice this week. Ward is officially questionable for Saturday's game versus Houston, with safety Grant Delpit and kicker Dustin Hopkins, wide receiver Cedric Tillman, all ruled out. Green Bay's final injury report comes out later today. In Philly, A.J. Brown not practicing due to a knee injury. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Fourth and final hour of the show, hour 20 of a wild week in Music City, USA. It is RKW, brewed by 8th and Roast, right here on 104.5 The Zone. Wherever you are navigating around Nashville, we hope you are doing so safely. Everyone forgets how to drive when it's like this outside, so just take your time, but not too much time.
Forgetting how to drive is fast and slow.
That's right.
Yeah.
There is a too slow, just as is a too fast. But
I
it's
mean,
raining
there was
pretty
a-
hard. So.
Drive too slow.
Oh,
Yes, there it
that's what
is.
I was waiting on.
It was
That's
in
what I was
my
waiting on
mind.
right
New
there.
England
So-
Patriots fans, get used to that voice.
Fire too slow.
Thank you.
Man, I remember that one, man. Well,
Bone Foster, Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh. I'm Will Bowling. Coming up in 20 minutes, Mike Golic Jr. Very excited to talk with Mike this morning, mainly because the wind chill in Kansas City this weekend is being projected as low as negative 30 degrees. That is Fahrenheit, friends. Negative 30
Yikes.
degree wind chill. I am curious how Mike Golic Jr. would dress on the field as an offensive lineman. I imagine these are the kind of topics that Mike thrives in.
see, you also have to, there's a play to be made there too, right, Will? Like you're talking about Mike Golic Jr. in Kansas City in cold weather. You know the other X factor that then goes into his dressing? That's Taylor. What he put on for Taylor
point.
Swift.
Great point.
You know what I'm saying? Like, is he going sleeves or no sleeves just to show her how tough he is? Like, these are the questions that we have to get answers for when it comes down to him.
He puts on for his boo.
Yes.
I feel like when you get that cold, it doesn't matter what you do. Like, you can put all the clothes on you want to. You can have all the pairs of socks on you want. It doesn't matter. It's just cold. You're just going to have to tough it out.
To that point, I've been in those. So it's wind chill too, Will. So it's going to be
wind chill, negative 30.
So to Bert's point, what sucks in those type of weather games is it feel like your skin is going to break because it's so cold outside. Like you can put on Vaseline and there's warm skin that you can put on. There's capsaicin you can put on. Like we go through all types of stuff to try to stay warm on the field. When that wind start cutting through, like that Vaseline gets cold. The warm skin does not go into effect, or the capsaicin. Like it feels like your skin is going to peel apart in those, like split.
Who's the head coach who put on the, like, not Vaseline, but like
Capsaicin. Yeah.
Yes, on their face. It was a while ago, but there was a head coach in a really cold weather game who did it, and their like face like melted off
Some
almost.
icy hot or
I think it
something.
was
was-
Bobby Petrino.
Was it?
Was it really him?
I could be wrong. Let me double check.
Bobby
Interesting.
Petrino.
See, my stupid Middle Tennessee, I've lived here my whole life self feels that way when it's like 20. My skin's going to break. I got to get out of this.
I'm telling you,
But I'm
there's
soft.
nothing worse than that. No, I am too. I can admit, since I've retired, my weathered skin is soft now. It is so soft. How many times I sit in the studio? It's cold in here. I'm blowing in my hands and stuff. I've gotten soft as far as outside weather goes, and I am not afraid to admit that. And screw y'all who talk about me.
Yeah.
Before we get back to Titans interviews this weekend, what is the perfect temperature for a home this time of year?
70.
Nah, 68.
I'm 68.
I'm a
That's what-
68, man.
It's because it's a guy thing. Travis wakes up in the middle of the night, stops to the temperature gauge. I told you not to turn it up to 70. 68. That's the magic number.
Why do I don't know what it is.
68.
Women love touching that thing.
Oh, and I get in trouble.
And Cheyenne
Tread
does not.
carefully.
She
Save it,
thinks
save it.
I'll get in trouble for this because I need somebody to explain to me how you think jacking the thermostat up to 74. She's like, oh, it's cold in here. I'm like, do you understand it? A little bit works, and it doesn't do it instantly. It's not. It has to do the whole house. And Cheyenne doesn't know whether cool, warm, off, fan on. She doesn't know what any of it means. She's just hitting buttons. She's just cold. Poor girl. I buy her blankets. She's got heating blankets. She's got anything in the world you need to be warm, and then she will find any excuse to be cold. Every window in the house is open, girl, and you got to have heat turned up to 75. What in the world are we doing?
Let's go.
Every light in the house is on. The backyard's bright as the crack of dawn.
It is, and the screen door is open.
Yep.
All those things, man.
By the way, Tom Coughlin, the New York Giants coach, had put some sort of an icy
That's right.
hot
Yep.
solution on his face.
Tom Coughlin.
I was reading the New York Post article about that. He had to have surgery to get that dead skin taken off his face after the game.
It made his
Yikes.
skin?
Messed his face up.
No. Y'all knew this?
I didn't know,
No.
like, actually they had to peel skin off.
Jacksonville Jaguars legend, Tom Coughlin.
Tom Coughlin.
Just like Titans
Holy
legend Randy Moss.
smokes.
615-737-1045 is the number. Ian Rappaport reporting that Bengals OC Brian Callahan, who has requests to interview for 4 of the open jobs, will speak with the Titans today and with the Chargers on Tuesday. Panthers and Falcons have also requested interviews with the Cincinnati offensive coordinator, who is in high demand. Other reports this morning say that Antonio Pierce, Raiders interim, will meet with the Titans this weekend. So it appears Callahan is up first and Pierce is up second. Other news this morning, Gerard Mayo, the head coach of the New England Patriots.
Yeah. Big time. Of these names that are coming out as far as being interviewed for this job, your final ones are probably slow at Callahan. Like, where are we at on saying who's the guys that you say is your number one dude, man? Because Sloat, Callahan, to me, Ben Johnson is the names. Like, I know they're going to cast a wide net to throw us off when it comes down to who you choose to hire. But if we're going to be real about what we're asking this team to do, I guess assign somebody who's a serious contender for this, not just somebody that we think is going to be a name, because these offensive guys are nice and it sounds like it can work. There's a lot of work to be done here when you look at who the next hire should be.
And I always wonder with these first initial virtual interviews, how much they can see right away, okay, that is not going to work, or, okay, we're really starting to get interested, let's move them on. Because it's virtual, right? You don't get the same in-person feel, but how much can you eliminate a guy really quickly, too, in this situation?
To the phones, Aaron is in Jacksonville. Up next, what's up, Aaron?
What's going on, guys? Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
No doubt.
Yep. So I wanted to discuss about why I think Miss Amy's not sharing her vision, and then I would love to get you guys' take on it as well. But the reason why I think she's not sharing it is because last year, I think before Rand got hired, the whole word or the whole thing was collaboration, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're any GM or any head coach that wants to get hired, you're going to do your research on that team. So if Miss Amy comes out and shares her vision, how many of those head coaches you think would come in and just regurgitate what she said, but it may not really be their vision?
Oh,
thank you, Aaron.
Nice.
Hand claps from Kayla right there on that one.
It's a good point. However, I don't think it keeps the organization and Rand Carthon from just giving the standard basic, we want a leader of men who wants to be here. Like you can give a vision without giving any insight into your actual vision. That's where I think he messed up.
Right.
And you can kind of do that if you look at Dan Campbell's press conference with the Lions. Like, a lot of people poo-pooed him after that, but it did give you a bulletin board menu of what the Lions wanted to be, right? They wanted to be aggressive. They wanted to bite your kneecaps off, and it didn't mean anything. He didn't say anything. He's not actually hiring kneecap biters, but it kind of showed you what the team was, the image of the team was going to be.
And Rand Carthon doesn't owe us an explanation. No. I think he could have helped himself by giving the cookie-cutter answer that everyone gives. We want someone who is going to bring an exciting brand of football to Nashville.
And how much did Amy say? Like, nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Maybe Amy was like, do not go there.
Yeah. And that was my thing. I actually think it's a moving field goal at this point, too. Like, moving the goalpost at this point, too. Like, if I say what I want and it turns into something else because of the coach we hired, then I look like a fool. I look like, well, you guys weren't aligned from the beginning. Me personally, y'all know this has been my stance. Because I asked you guys, I was like, is it really that important that Rand and Miss Amy didn't say what their visions were? And y'all were like, yeah, the fan base deserves to know. But as a player, sometimes when you say that type of stuff out loud, it gets picked apart. Mm-hmm. You get ruled against. You get held directly to that because sports is ever changing. It always is. And how I feel right now with where this team is could be totally different after you hire the coach. Dan Campbell said what he said, and they lived by that. I think we all knew at that time they were going to have a hard camp. They're going to play a tough, gritty style of ball. And he probably walked into that meeting with Mrs. Ford and probably told them that, and it made them believe. Like, somebody can blow you away in this interview process. So to say my vision is, hey, we're going to have an up-tempo offense. We're going to be very disciplined. And you have 30 penalties in the first game. I know that's a stretch right there. But it's fluid to me, I feel like, where this franchise is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I said it yesterday, and I will say it again. I believe that there are media members and journalists who do not get scoops from Rand Carthon in the way that they got scoops from administrations in the past, who are going to publicly hold that against him and not give him the benefit of the doubt. Rand does not care. And it's not his job to care about coddling media members who are going to ask argumentative and aggressive questions at him because he doesn't give them scoops.
Right.
There's a lot that might change here in the next several years.
It is. What we got to get down to is playing ball here.
Anyway, I say that admitting that I think Rand could have helped himself by being more forthcoming with the vision. But like Kayla said, he was put in a situation where we don't know what Amy Adams Strunk told him to say or not say. Mm-hmm. And that is the game of telephone that you have to play when the owner makes the decision and the general manager does the press conference.
Right.
Yep.
That is the situation Rand is put in when Amy didn't speak. Do we think she should have? It's probably a different question. But that's her decision. She's the owner of the team. That's what they decided to do. I believe there is a vision. I don't like this speculation that, well, they're not saying there is one because there isn't one yet. I would find that very hard to believe.
Right.
That they're doing this entire process and they're making this decision without knowing what they want now instead. Coming up next, Mike Golic Jr. joins us. He had some very strong thoughts about Mike Vrabel's firing, about where the Titans organization is going next. We'll also talk about Super Wildcard Weekend with him. I'm curious, though, from the national perspective, knowing what we know now, has Mike Golic Jr. changed his stance on Mike Vrabel's firing by the Tennessee Titans, knowing that Mike Vrabel wanted control of the roster? Should he have been given that? Mike Golic Jr. answers those questions and more coming up next.
It's Ramon Foster for Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller has been in business, y'all, since 1990, and is a family-owned and operated company. And there's a lot of values that they hold. Number one is the 100% satisfaction. They live by happy you'll be or the service is free. I don't care if that's tankless water heater. I don't care if there's a traditional water heater. I don't care if that's your heating and cooling or electrical, man. If you're not happy with the service, it'll be free. And that's just what they do. If you need anything done to your house, they make it easy and simple for you, too. You can visit happyhealer.com the same way I do and book a session for your house. The professional, experienced, and trustworthy technicians come into your home and leave it cleaner and better than they found it. Of course, if you need something fixed, they're going to leave it better, but that's neither here nor there. If you need something done around your house, whether it be plumbing, heating, cooling, or electrical, reach out to the folks I trust at happyhealer.com.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast on 104.5 The Zone as we roll right along through hour number 4. Bowen Foster, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling with you, joined on the phone lines by the biggest Taylor Swift fan in our Rolodex. I don't know if negative 30 wind chill, though, is enough still to get Mike Golic Jr. to go see Taylor Swift and the Kansas City Chiefs. Mike, what's going on? How are you?
Well, I mean, listen, if you're going to go see her there, she's going to be in like a nice warm box. So I feel like that's the route you got to go, is you just got to be as close as possible to the person we're all trying to see.
This is a good point. That's how we feel around Ramon Foster all the time, Mike. At this point, though, Mike, we'll get to Titans and Mike Vrabel and all of these things, but negative 30-degree wind chill in Kansas City, is it like legitimately unsafe for offensive linemen to go sleeveless in those conditions? Like, how are you bundling up as a player for conditions like that?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Like, I could sit here now and say that, but when
Sure.
I was a player, I mean, that was how we all operated. Like, I had one buddy of mine who was a offensive guard from Klein, Texas, and he wore long sleeves in training camp when it was hotter than hell, and he wore them in the winter, and he said, you can't give me grief about wearing them when it's cold because I wear it when it's hot too. I was the opposite way. I was always skin out there, especially when I was playing. You got the jackets on the sideline. You got all the warmers and everything there. But I was usually out there just going raw with the arms and feeling like an idiot now looking back on it.
Raw with the arms.
Oh my
Incredible.
gosh.
This is the kind of insight you get from Mike Golic Jr. Check out Gojo and Golic, 7 to 9 Central on YouTube, DraftKings. These guys do an outstanding job. Mike, when you speak about Mike Vrabel, the Tennessee Titans, and the fiasco of a week it's been here, the new reporting about Mike Vrabel wanting personnel control, wanting a Bill O'Brien, Bill Belichick kind of setup here last offseason and not getting it. Those details that come out, what was your initial reaction, and has that reaction changed at all as we get more details about why Mike Vrabel is no longer the head coach of the Tennessee Titans?
No, I still look at it as you let a quality coach get out of the building at a time where you probably need that as much or more than ever. And, you know, I understand there are people that are always going to balk at that idea of giving a head coach that level of control because outside of, you know, the guy we recently said goodbye to, Bill Belichick, very rarely does it work well or at all, and let alone for that long. But I think the admission last year when you made the change at GM was personnel had been enough of an issue, and I would have thought that it was worth it to keep Mike Vrabel there for what he afforded you as a head coach. I called him the NFL's MacGyver, being able to take basically whatever was available in Tennessee at the time and turn it somehow into a postseason contender, the 1 seed a few years ago. I would have thought it would have been worth at least exploring that to keep him around the building versus now. I mean, what a vote of confidence for Ron Carthen and what he's done already on his time as the Titans GM to now say, hey, we're not only going to side with you on that, but we're going to let you go and pick the next guy that's going to work with you as head coach.
Mike, when you look at, you know, the question marks behind, first and foremost, that wasn't a proper introduction. Mike, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. It's been way too long since I've come over here and just completely disrupted a Friday with you guys.
I was trying to decide if I go professional or do I act like a fool with my offensive line friend, man? Like, which one we doing today? Because I saw your Reese's post, and you said you knocked almost all of them off the list, which is insane, man.
Dude, the next time I have to go to my doctor is going to be a really interesting because I moved out to Los Angeles, so I'm getting ready to like start with a new doctor, and it's kind of like going on a first date where you're trying to be on your best behavior. You're trying to make sure that, you know, you're not passing gas at the table. You brush your teeth, you got everything out in there. And so I got to go to my new doctor and try and put my best foot forward. And, like, I've been doing Reese's parking lot reviews on Instagram and Twitter for the better part of the last year. I don't know what kind of shape my blood sugar's in right now, where my cholesterol's at with all this. It's been a delicious foray into this, but I don't know what my insides are going to have to say about this.
See, pardon me for trying to be a professional on this show.
This is why Mike on a Friday is
Mike.
just perfect. Like, this is just really perfect.
Mike, the next time I come at you sideways trying to be a professional first, you make sure you get me back in line and tell me false start, reset the down, okay?
No, that's fine. Listen, we started off on the right foot. You guys had the Taylor Swift intro and all that. And I always call it bacon wrapping. Like, we all got bosses that like listen to this stuff sometimes. You got to start them off with very sports things, you know, what do we think is coming up on Super Wild Card Weekend? And did the Titans do the right thing with Mike Vrabel? And will they live to regret this? And now let's talk about not farting on dates and eating as much Reese's as humanly possible. Now we can get to the good stuff.
Now we can get to it. All right, we're back on track now, then, Mike. with that being said, though, man, the initial reaction of Vrabel being let go. You're on the West Coast, man. Why do you think there were so many question marks behind it? And how do you see Vrabel as a coach, that was ultimately fired that, is waiting to see what's his next move going to be?
Yeah, you know what, Ramon, and I'd be interested from your thought on this because I actually think you're the perfect person to speak to this. He always gave me the vibe of a Mike Tomlin where, obviously, Mike Tomlin came in with his own acumen, the same way Vrabel did on the defensive side of the ball and known for his prowess there. But I look at both of them as true leaders of men in that role and what they do in relating to the guys on the roster and being able to communicate that message and motivate and put people in the best position to succeed no matter the circumstances. We've watched Mike Tomlin do that yet again this season, but I always thought that was the strength of Mike Vrabel through so much of his tenure there. And I feel like we underrate that because it's hard to quantify. It's hard to look and, not have what we've got now this cycle with Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick, these guys who have offensive numbers and acumen tied to their accomplishment, or Mike McDonald and the Baltimore Ravens with this great scheme that everyone's obsessed with right now, when in actuality, the most important trait you can have for a coach, and even Sean McVay would testify to this, who came over with all of the X's and O's acumen, but is lauded by anyone who will tell you about the beginning of his Rams tenure for how he was able to connect with and motivate that team. That's what I think of when I think of a guy like Mike Vrabel and what he does so well. And that's why I think it'll always be in demand, because that's a skill set that, while it's hard for most people to identify when doing a job search, it's easy to see, and I think the name association with Mike Vrabel, so he's always going to have a place in this.
And I think you're right when it comes down to him and his players and the motivation that he provides to those guys and the job that he does. I think where this organization is now, Mike, to answer your question that you were going to ask me, is there needs to be a separation of power and how you delegate who does what job. Where are you at, Mike? With that being said, your professional background and your dad's also, right? How do you feel about a coach having that type of power, to where it was rumored that he wanted to be control of the roster, basically acting GM essentially, or at least have enough power that he's the one who's the last call? Are you thinking that's the way to run a program, Mike, or an organization franchise? Or is that too much too soon for a coach who has a lot of hurdles here with a second-year quarterback in Will Levis?
I think it's on a case-by-case basis. Like, let's put it this way. I can understand why Vrabel went for that. Because look at what he's done in this franchise so far, in the face of, especially in the last couple of years, a roster that the organization, based on the moves they made at GM, admitted was not good enough. And that's the reason we got in the situation we are now. That being said, if you're asking me general business practices on this, I do always think you benefit from more voices in the process, provided everybody's on the same page. And there are very few coaches who are also going to be able to do that other job so well. We saw even at the end of Bill Belichick, who's arguably the best to do that at the NFL level. By the end, the GM Bill Belichick was undermining the head coach Bill Belichick, because they're not similar skill sets, because it's even more added to the plate of coaches that already have so much that they've got to manage around the building. And so I think in general, for the vast majority of coaches, I do believe having someone who's in charge of that, but who you are aligned with, who you've got that relationship with, you guys see and evaluate football, at least in a similar enough way, in the things that are like the core tenets of what you value. I do think having another voice in the room, because, conflict is the love language in my mind of athletics. And having dissenting voices in there who respect each other can get you to better results in terms of the personnel you ultimately bring in.
Yeah.
Mike Golic Jr. of Gojo and Golic joining us this morning on RKW. So before I get to where you think the Titans go next, I'm just really curious now, with Gerard Mayo taking the New England job, where the heck do you think Mike Vrabel ends up? Or could he just take a year off and entertain us all on some television platform?
Boy, I would love that. I mean, obviously, he's got the great relationship with, the Bussin' with the Boys guys, and could very easily see something like that coming to fruition. But I think for him, there's going to be a number of teams that – it's interesting, though, because to that point, this offseason might be the most robust group of coaching candidates we've seen, between already proven NFL veterans, Bill Belichick obviously in that group now, along with Mike Vrabel, the potential that Jim Harbaugh, who is also an experienced NFL head coach, could jump back into the mix alongside a group of potential first-timers like Ben Johnson, like Bobby Slowick, like Mike McDonald, or even some other, head coaches that had gone back to be coordinators like Raheem Morris, Dan Quinn, obviously getting talked about a lot with the Seahawks job. I think Mike Vrabel is going to be near the top of the list of the veteran coaches that could be in here. Like, he's younger and certainly has more left in the tank than a Bill Belichick or if a Pete Carroll wanted to keep coaching. I think I'd probably slot him right below Jim Harbaugh just because Jim's got this unbelievable track record at all his stops at being able to jumpstart programs quickly. But if you're looking for a veteran coach who's going to come in and immediately know how to operate and win at this level, then Mike Vrabel would be your guy, and I think he'll be in high demand because of it.
So we haven't heard the vision yet, but Amy Adams-Strunk, the owner of the Tennessee Titans, has come out and said that will be revealed. So there's a lot of speculation on what they're really looking for. In your opinion, Mike, what do you think fits best for this franchise right now in a situation that they've got a second-year GM, you've got a brand-new quarterback, and there's a lot to be fixed on this team?
Yeah, I think it starts with when you draft a quarterback, and I understand Will didn't end up getting drafted in the first round like a lot of people thought, but I think in a time where you're getting ready to move on from Derrick Henry more than likely as your identity on offense, and you're trying to get that quarterback right, I think it's going to end up being an offensive voice. I think when you look at what Ben Johnson's been able to do with Jared Goff, obviously people thought he might get caught up in last cycle. I think this is a place that could be appealing because of how they've operated. They, especially traditionally in recent years, have been a play-action heavy group even when Ryan Tannehill was the quarterback. And so that can slot in, do a lot of the things that Will Levis, remember his best season in college, his junior year when Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator before he left that last year and went back to the Rams. I think whether it is Bobby Slowick, who's kind of cut from that same cloth, or Ben Johnson, those would probably be the two top targets you would imagine because they come with that offensive background. I think they would be more into the collaborative process than maybe a veteran coach, like Bill Belichick, who might come in and still want to try for personnel control. Jim Harbaugh, because of the leverage that he has, would probably be asking for something similar. I think focusing on offense to make sure you're maximizing your asset at quarterback and someone that's going to play well with others is probably going to make one of those two guys the person you'd swing for off top the hardest.
Mike Golic Jr., our guest, DraftKings Network, Gojo and Golic, weekdays 7 to 9 on YouTube. Mike, I think it's easy to say who the worst opening is in the NFL right now with the owner that throws drinks at people in Carolina. It is a harder conversation to have perhaps about what the best opening is at this point. Is that L.A. to you with Justin Herbert, or is the cap situation there enough to make you, if you were a head coaching candidate, want to look elsewhere a bit more?
Yeah, you know what? It's I think all about what you value, and I still think at its core, Mina Kimes made the best comparison to the Los Angeles Chargers I've ever heard, which is it's buying a haunted mansion. It's beautiful. It looks great. You're getting an awesome crib, but there were people that were murdered in this house, and now you're going to have to deal with the ghosts of what has gone on because every year we see the same injury issues or the organization's certain lack of willingness to spend in certain spots all pop up and snake bite you. But you guys know the hardest question in sports to answer in North America is who's your starting quarterback, and you've got a resounding answer to that question that you can try and maximize. You'd have to get creative in the other places, but this is like we always say after you sign quarterbacks to big deals in general for organizations that are established. Think the Philadelphia Eagles and what they're getting ready to embark on. Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals is, yeah, well, you know what? That's why GMs get paid. That's why front office personnel get paid, to go out there and maximize everything else in the margins around that position once you've got that established. So I think it would be appealing like that for that reason. Listen, there's something to be said. The Washington Commanders sitting there in that, 1-2 in that 2-hole right now in a draft that's seen as two surefire quarterbacks up top in terms of guys that'll be taken in the first round. You combine that capital with, the change in ownership, the different vibes around the building right now, a new coach, being the new coach that comes in at probably the best time in Washington Commanders' recent history to do so there in terms of your workplace environment and the resources available to you. I think if you're inclined to that, once the Bears decided to bring Matt Eberflus back, which is another interesting decision, I think it made the Washington job that much more appealing because now you're going to get Drake May or Caleb Williams, whoever falls to that spot, in a draft that seems those guys are pretty eye to eye right now.
Mike, people in Nashville want an offensive mind, but a lot of those offensive minds are deputies of head coaches who are those up-and-coming offensive minds a few years ago, namely Frank Smith in Miami under Mike McDaniel. You have Brian Callahan, who's in Cincinnati with Zach Taylor. Bobby Slowick, of course, in Houston, kind of running his own offense there, obviously, with DeMeco Ryans, but a name that's also come up here. Of those guys, what do you need to learn from a non-play calling offensive coordinator to believe that guy is ready to now run his own ship without that deputy with him? And is there a name for you that kind of stands out of those three or any others?
Well, I mean, to me, I think it's always been Bobby, like you said, because he's already running the show. And I think that's the thing that I want to know more so than just, hey, game day, are you calling plays? Because, again, while some head coaches are going to call plays on their side of the ball, Mike McCarthy took it back this year. Matt Eberflus, once they had to make the change with Alan Williams at the beginning of the season, took over defensive play calling. It's not always the responsibility you have. In an ideal situation, you'd have coordinators that they can delegate to. And so I want to know, day to day during the week, what is their role in the game plan? What is their role in addressing the team? How they manage the people on that group? How they manage the players on the team? What the relationships are like there? Because I truly think, and this is something I've heard Dominique Foxworth talk about for years, is developing those soft skills associated with that role of being a leader are so important. And so, yeah, if you don't have the play calling portion on your resume, I want to know how you manage the rest of it and try and use that to inform my decision as best as possible to see, all right, not only what are you going to afford us and what you offer us in that conversation, because you're always going to be involved in the game planning when you're a head coach who cut his teeth on that side of the ball, but then how do you manage the rest of it in a way that I think should be weighed far more heavily?
Mike, man, it'll be a two-part question for you because I know the boogeyman got you the same way that he got us in the SEC. One, what was your reaction respectfully to Nick Saban stepping down? And two, what do you think about that in the state of Alabama moving forward? I didn't want to bring up the old, 2013 BCS game, but the boogeyman got you too.
Wow.
Yeah. Hey, listen, man. I thought when you said, I thought you were going to put his foot down on a step down on my throat in that game because that's exactly what happened. It was not cute out here. Although shout out to TCU for getting beat so bad by Georgia last year that it kind of is going to make people forget about that. I owe those players a beer at some point. They've joined the club with us, and so now we all get to proceed accordingly.
Listen that you bring them down to lift you up, baby.
Hey, listen, exactly. You know what? When they go low, we go lower around here.
Notre Dame legend Max Duggan.
In all seriousness, it's one of those where seeing the operation up close in that game, and that was early on, 2009 when they win the first title. We were there for the first back-to-back before Georgia did it most recently last year, and seeing the operation up close and just the level of preparation that comes with playing a Nick Saban coach team, they were ready for everything that we had in that game. C.J. Mosley, who is their starting linebacker, obviously playing on the side of the ball that Nick Saban has helped innovate in college sports and really in a way that's translated up to the NFL as well. You just saw there was no stone left unturned. And he was always a master. They called it the process around in Alabama, but in my mind, that was a mastery of every situation presented, whether it was navigating the 40 days off between the conference championship and the national championship in the BCS era, navigating the turnaround from the gap leading to the CFP and then a week to turn around and play the title game. Once they got there, Nick Saban was always ready for that and was always, a guy that recruited at the highest level, developed talented to NFL players at the highest level, and managed to be consistent in an era that kind of like Belichick in the NFL, man, where free agency was not designed to let a team be that good for that long. In college football, we've seen a ton of change, especially in recent years. And for him to go out on a year where on one of the maybe least talented rosters he's had in a while overall in terms of top-end production, not in star rankings, he got him to beat Georgia in the SEC championship game and almost beat the team that won the national championship this year in college football. It's a huge void being left in what he did to change the sport. He's unequivocally the best college football coach to ever do it at this level and likely the best that we'll ever see. That job now becomes really interesting. I know Washington fans are very nervous. Kalen DeBoer was scheduled to do a hit on a local radio station. He ain't doing it no more because we saw Dan Lanning publicly rebuff the Alabama job with a hype video designed to get recruits to come up to Oregon. So I think it's still a desirable job because we just mentioned they were 14-1, whatever they were this season to finish off. The program's in a very healthy place because of what Nick Saban has done and situated it as. And so whoever steps in there is going to have every resource known to man, is still going to have the bedrock of years of top flight recruiting classes, and now is going to just try and have to figure out how to put their own imprint on a place that has the indelible Saban mark left on it.
Mike, one more thing. Before you get rid of Reese's, I just tried the new Reese's cups with Cocoa Puffs in them.
Oh.
So just try them if you haven't.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm big on the Reese's cups, the big cups that are full. The Cocoa Puffs, phenomenal. I mean, Cocoa Puffs are a great addition to anything. Look at God, won't you do it? But I would also say, if you haven't had it yet, the Reese's Big Cup with the potato chip in it. A little more subtle crunch, but the salt's mixed in there amongst the peanut butter. It's a really delightful flavor combination, a textural marvel, and something I think you'll really enjoy.
Love it.
Amazing. Mike Golic Jr. making us smarter about so many things every time we visit with him. Mike, thank you as always.
Hey, thank you, guys. Always a pleasure.
Thanks,
Have
Mike.
a good one.
Absolutely. There he is, Mike Golic Jr. Check out Gojo and Golic, 7 to 9 Central AM. You can have us on one screen, have them on the other. They are outstanding. Headlines of the way out, and another coach that has now publicly rebuffed Alabama. Next.
When it comes to large home repairs, a lot of the time we homeowners pretend we don't see the warning signs. We are afraid of what we're going to hear. This is especially true with waterproofing and foundation repair. It could be something big that needs to be fixed right away, or it could be a small problem that'll become bigger later. Or it could be nothing at all. Bottom line is, we don't know, and we certainly don't want to be sold something we do not need. We need a peace of mind, and United Structural Systems is a company to give you that. With over 25,000 100% satisfied residential customers, here's how that make that happen. When USS comes out to your house, you're going to get a problem solver who provides a peace of mind to the customer. That's you, the homeowner. You're not going to get someone who is worried about meeting a sales quota or upselling the next big thing, but someone there to educate you and help you understand what's happening with your home. At USS, their only measure of success is how satisfied the homeowner is and not a closing ratio. Homeowners like myself trust USS, keeping homes dry and stable for over 25 years. USS serving Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, and Northern Alabama. You can reach them online at USSTN.com or call them 615-488-7855.
Wrapping up the show on RKW, brewed by 8th and Roast. The Buck Rising Show is next. And again, if you missed it, Buck had more reporting last night on why Mike Vrabel is no longer the coach of the Titans. So I would imagine you'll hear a lot of that this morning. Coming up next. It has now become a recruiting pitch to say no to Alabama. Dan Lanning yesterday posted an I'm not leaving video. And now Steve Sarkisian and Texas have done a video of here to stay. I don't know if that means I don't think that means Steve Sarkisian was offered the job, but it means that, hey, this is an opportunity to recruit 18-year-olds and say, hey, he's wanted by Bama. You should come here. So anyway, add Steve Sarkisian to the list.
Sorry, guys. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I didn't get to listen to the last segment. I was just getting off the phone with Alabama. I wanted to let you guys know that I'm not going anywhere.
Oh,
Your producer is not leaving.
There we go.
Appreciate
Did you
you.
do
Commit
a
to the
video?
Burt.
Did you do a video?
My video will be released later
Okay.
today.
Heck yeah.
Good.
Appreciate that, man.
Bert also had you sent this on Twitter and you told us in a break the Will Levis thought that you had.
Patriots fans are not the only ones who are excited to see their new head coach. Will Levis also very excited because if you guys didn't know, he loves mayo. Someone told me I was being cringe with that joke. It's the first time I've ever been told that before. I don't know how to feel.
I actually thought that was solid, Bert.
I thought it was good too. Maybe I'm just getting old, man. Maybe that's why Ramon likes it. I'm in the old man
So
club with
old,
him.
Bert.
Hit 30. Come on now.
I'm telling you now, dirty 30, boy.
Speaking of old, I will give Nick Saban credit. He don't need any more. But noticing when to bow out, a lot of people in sports have a hard time saying goodbye to that old thing.
Yep.
And he was just like, I can't go like I used to, and that to me I thought was a tip of the hat because y'all know how athletes struggle with letting go. Coaches do the exact same thing. So good on him, man. But this job to the point of I'm not leaving, Will, is those are big shoes.
And that's why I think really Bill Belichick at 71 years old, and I think we've seen the digression and things in New England. I think at this point you bow out in that situation, but it looks like he will continue to coach. I don't really know if that's the greatest idea.
Not letting go like quarterback Casey Thompson, who just committed to Oklahoma last night, his fourth school in 7 years. Bro entered the transfer portal. He needs to enter the LinkedIn portal.
26?
Go
25?
run an enterprise rent-a-car at a airport of your choosing.
To Kayla's, what is it,
Like, what are
26,
you-
27?
He's old.
He's Thompson will turn 26 on October 3rd. So he is 1 year and he's 1 year and 3 months younger than me because I will turn 27 in July.
Wow.
So I still am the same age as athletes for, I guess, one more year. It's like John Fulkerson is like the last Tennessee athlete to ever be older than me.
Yeah.
And he was, 2 years ago? Santiago Vescovi is close.
Shanti's, 24? Maybe.
I think he's
25.
23, actually, because he started UT in the day the Titans beat the Patriots in New England in the divisional round.
I couldn't imagine
Because
being
I was in the
26.
hospital that day watching both of them.
I was about to go into like contract negotiations at that point. Like, can you imagine, man?
And it's almost like it's a new generation of kids at this point.
No, he's about to have a kid.
I was going to say, if Casey Thompson's a kid, I'm a kid, so be careful.
God, dog,
Buck was trying to get in here already.
He's
No,
ready
Buck
to go.
has been sitting in the
He's
studio.
ready
He
to
and-
roll.
The phone meeting that he and Lucas typically have happened in person today.
Yeah. Goodness gracious.
Ramon has already picked Steelers money line for this weekend. Anyone else have any bold predictions on NFL Super Wildcard Weekend?
I made mine, I think, in
Yeah.
Tampa Bay.
Tampa over Philly.
I took Tampa Bay, yeah.
I will go Miami scores single digits in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Not really a bold prediction at all, actually.
That's
I just
cold.
don't
It's gonna
think
be cold.
Miami gets to double digits.
Yeah.
Give me Houston over Cleveland. There's mine.
There you go. Shut
Oh,
Joe
yeah.
Flacco down.
Texans over Browns.
This ain't early bird special. Get that old ass dude out of here.
How many times we got to teach you this lesson, old man?
Right? Oh, yes.
All right, let's go to the weekend
Friday. I
Have a good
changed it up.
weekend, y'all.
It's Friday, Mufasa.
Mufasa.
Special thanks to Mike
Mufasa.
Keith, to Brent Hubbs, to Mike Golic Jr. for joining us this morning. Back at it. We will be live Monday. So we'll be here with the latest on the Titans surge. The Buck Rising Show is next. Ramon Foster, words of wisdom other than Steelers money line. They're right
Yeah, be safe this weekend. Make it back to us on Monday, good people. But at all times, man, no matter who you hear they're interviewing, don't tweet about it because your Twitter fingers and your mic is always hot.